let's get started on this week's video message. I have an outline in front of me of just some things that I wanted to touch on so you can kind of have a roadmap for where we're going. So first I'm just going to talk about some updates of things that just happened since the last video message, some signs and events and things to watch for in this last hour. Then I'm going to share with you my screenshots. Then we're going to get to the heart of the message. And to do that, I'm going to take you on a journey back to my past. Some experiences that I've never shared before on my journey that led me to where I'm at today. And then I'm just going to sum it up with some things at the end. So let's get started. All right, so in the last video message, I talked a little bit again about Halloween, things that you guys have shared with me, some of your experiences and things that you've noticed and observed. And I want to share a couple more things that have come through. One thing that I noticed after the last video message, I talked about how after publishing that 3-video series to message 127, how difficult that was and all of the obstacles I encountered, but how I finally had that breakthrough and I was finally able to get those videos out. Something I mentioned was that the day that I published those videos, I had a video on my channel about my son's acne that went viral. And because of that video going viral, it led to so many other things. One of those things was an increase in sales on my website for the skincare product that I make. And I didn't even realize it till after that video message, as I was going through and doing my accounting, that my biggest wave of sales came on Halloween. It came on October 31st. So to me, that was another witness, another sign that when we sacrifice and we give things up for the Lord to honor Him, we are blessed. Anyways, that made me smile, so I just had to share that. And then another thing that came through from a couple of you, I'm going to show you right here an image on the screen, was the cups that they were giving out at Burger King. Take a look at this. If you'll notice down at the bottom of the cup, it says, "Be cursed." And people that were eating were looking at their cup and thinking, do I really want to drink what's in here? Or am I going to be cursed if I drink this? They thought it was really odd that a restaurant establishment like Burger King would be cursing its customers. People were asking for explanations. What is this? Clearly it's for publicity, but also there has to be something behind it. So I know a lot of you were saying, I'm done with Burger King. I don't want to eat at a place that curses its customers. And it reminded me of what I shared a few videos ago when we were at Lagoon in September and we ordered hot chocolate and it came out in those cups that said seance and they had a really demonic image on the front of them and they were really creepy, and so we just threw our hot chocolate away. What it boils down to is we have to be so careful and so observant about what it is we're spending money on and what it is we're consuming. Just another reminder to bless everything you take into your body. Whether it's intentional or not, words and images are powerful. So thanks to those of you who shared that with me. And of course, I always welcome experiences, stories. So if you have something you want to share, feel free to reach out to me anytime. All right, so since my last video message, I have had some crazy experience and discovered some things that I feel like most people wouldn't even believe. I don't even think I'd believe it myself if I was hearing all of this from someone else. I have seen and experienced so many things that I can't talk about in these videos. So much so that my own husband sometimes worries for our safety. In fact, the day after I recorded this video, I received a phone call from one of the leaders of one of these organizations who is not happy about what's been being exposed. Now, I'm not going to say her name and I'm not going to say her organization, but I will say that she tried her best to convince me that I have been deceived in my own personal revelation I've been receiving about all of this. She actually said to me, I want you to go back to the Lord in sincere and earnest fasting and prayer and say to Him, Lord, it's possible that I might have misinterpreted what you've been showing me. And I've been misinterpreting a lot of these experiences that I've been having and a lot of this revelation I've been receiving. Maybe it's not from you. So she wanted me to go back to the Lord and question the personal revelation I've been receiving. She was trying to pull a Martin Harris. And we all know how that worked out for Martin Harris and Joseph Smith. And I said to her, I'm not going to do that because I had already been in genuine prayer and fasting and going to the temple when I was asking these questions about these certain organizations and if I needed to part ways with them, if they were filled with deception. And I said, not only did my answer come instantly, right at the end of my prayer, but it was the most powerful answer I have ever received, the most obvious answer that just fell right in front of me. There was no way to misread that. It was as clear as day. And I said, and that wasn't my only answer. After that, since that day, it has never stopped. I continue to receive witness after witness after witness after witness after witness, and I just can't deny it. There is no room for me to even doubt or to have the desire to question what I've received. And I would never ask anyone else to do that. I would never ask anyone to go back to the Lord and question the answers that they received for their own personal revelation. Anyways, she became more bold throughout the phone call and she just said, you know what? All of that is false. It's simply not true. You've been deceived. And this isn't the last time you're going to hear from me. I'm going to contact you again and we're going to talk about this. So for me, that in itself was a powerful witness. Seeing these people's true colors show who they really are come out, seeing the disguise come off and that inner wolf come out. It's just seriously been like a blockbuster movie. I told my husband it's like a Dateline episode. It's like a 2020 special with Barbara Walters. I could see this being an investigation and a documentary. It's almost just unreal, everything that I've been discovering as I've investigated all of these witnesses that continue to pour in. But so many people have come forward and recognized a lot of these red flags, a lot of these things that I've talked about in my recent videos and blog posts, and have said, I can confirm exactly what you're talking about. I was a part of that organization. I experienced that myself. My mother, my sister went to those events, and so many different people who don't even know each other have been coming forward and sharing their experiences with me, and I'm seeing how all these experiences align, how they are all almost exactly the same, each one confirming the other. The same people, the same places, the same names, the same teachings being taught, the exact same wording. And so as I've researched and investigated all of these claims and experiences that have been pouring in, I've discovered a rabbit hole that is not only extremely deep, but it is extremely wide. I have come to learn that many of these groups, I wouldn't be surprised if it was 99.9% of all of these groups, they are all affiliated and in some way connected. It's like there's this underground tunnel system. So you go down this deep rabbit hole, and when you get to the bottom, the tunnels all branch off different directions. But they're all connected, they're all intertwined, and they all lead to each other. And I've been able to piece this outline together of how this all originated, where it started, how it branched off and spread out, and how it got to where it is today. I mean, this could be a whole documentary in itself. So many different groups, cults, organizations, whatever you want to call them, that all share almost the exact teachings, which have led to so many what most people would call bizarre things that are happening. And just a few examples that I'll share range from groups in the process right now of building their own temple where they can perform temple work and temple ordinances outside of the church, to groups and organizations buying land out in the Utah desert, all in the name of homesteading, coaxing so many other people out there to give it a try to become homesteaders. So these people are persuaded into purchasing land out in the desert, thinking that it's just for the purpose of homesteading. They're being taught, you know what? You don't have to know anything about homesteading. We're here to teach you. We are a community that's going to rally around you and help you through this homesteading experience. And as they attend the classes, as they go to the meetings, they start to realize that this isn't just about homesteading. They turn into religious meetings. Suddenly they're being taught doctrine and philosophies that they don't feel comfortable with. The biggest one being that you've been spiritually led here to purchase this land because you are part of that special remnant held in reserve in these last days. Because out on this land in the desert, we are building Zion. We are building a place where the Lord will come first when he returns. He's going to visit our group first before he visits everyone else. We are special. We are privileged. And you have been called to be a part of that. So these people from other groups and organizations are all joining together and moving out into the Utah desert to establish this community with their own doctrines, their own philosophies, their own teachings that they're all individually receiving from their own revelations through muscle testing, seer stones, and the list goes on and on. They are building altars in their homes. They're wearing their temple clothing outside of the temple and participating in temple ordinances outside of the temple. They're creating so much room for so much deception, and they're opening up to allowing and welcoming all revelation that comes through every individual person as legit revelation. And they're joining together in other places outside of Utah. This isn't just happening in Utah. It's happening in Idaho, in Wyoming, in Missouri. I think I've even heard Montana, and I'm sure so many other states could be added to that list. But the things that I continue to hear, the stories and experiences that continue to pour in are all saying this. They're all saying the exact same thing from people who don't know each other, that are not sharing secondhand or third-hand information. They are sharing their own personal experiences within their own family. This rabbit hole is deep, it's wide, and so many of the elect are being deceived by it. I can't tell you how many people I have come across just over the past few weeks. People that I have always known to be strong, good members of the church who have since fallen away because of their affiliation with these groups, because of their teachings. These people are being convinced that they need to move on from and rise above the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that they need to run ahead of the shepherd. Rather than stay behind him and be protected from the wolves, they need to run ahead. And as they run ahead, they're running into these wolves, and they're being pulled in to the most crazy, bizarre deceptions that I have ever heard. In fact, every time I go onto Facebook, I notice a new post about somebody who is leaving the church or losing their faith and testimony because of these false teachings and groups. And here's a perfect example. Right as I was editing this, I quickly checked my Facebook alerts, and I was alerted on this post for someone I don't even know. And she says, "My husband is to stand before a disciplinary council soon. Hope they don't excommunicate him. He and my children were present, particularly my teen boy, was publicly called out yesterday in sacrament meeting. It was awful. Then afterwards, a rebuttal on our front porch. He has refused their several invitations to meet with them and be forced to talk about what he believes. The bishop has said if he still refuses to meet and talk, the disciplinary council will be set up. Of course, my husband won't. So that council is going to happen, and I believe they are desiring to excommunicate him. It's so childish and stupid, and I feel much fear is involved. Husband is talking about getting rebaptized by a man who has received his calling and election. Of course, a man from one of the cottage meetings. I am just lost and baffled. But he strongly believes Joseph never practiced polygamy and that Brigham Young was a false prophet." So as I got reading further down in the comments, she talked about how her husband read a book, a very well-known popular book right now, written by an LDS author, that is very controversial, and it is causing a lot of people to lose their testimonies and leave the church. So I keep hearing about this book, and I keep hearing about its teachings and how there's no evidence to support these teachings. They're merely theories. There's a lot of Mormon material in there. And so it's just been very sad to see the fruits of this book. The fruits are not good. The fruits are everybody leaving the church who reads this book. Now, usually when you write a book like that, you yourself get excommunicated from the church. So I don't know the status of the membership of this particular author, but I do see the great controversy that it's causing and how it's tearing up families. And I've noticed with just about every post I've ever seen about someone's spouse or someone themselves who is on this path to apostasy, when they get that disciplinary counsel, they always talk themselves as to being the victim, and the disciplinary counsel is the perpetrator. They make themselves out to sound so innocent, that they haven't done anything wrong, that it's merely a witch hunt. And people that read that start to get more anger built up and bitter feelings towards the church. You can tell, it's very clear that this man has been deceived, especially when she comments and says that he is planning to be baptized by someone outside of the church who has had their calling and election made sure. That right there explains why he's receiving this disciplinary counsel. It's clear that this bishop sees that he is on this path to apostasy and may be taking others with him if something isn't done soon. And I've noticed a pattern of it being older women, the matriarchs of the family. Satan is targeting the matriarchs of the family. And even my own friends have been coming forward saying, my mother is involved in this. My mother has been going to these classes, these workshops, these seminars. My mom is friends with a lot of these people. And no matter what we say to her and how we try to pull her back on the path, she won't listen. She's convinced that she's found the truth. She's convinced that this is the path of truth. And I keep hearing it again and again. My mother, my mother, my mother. All of these women, ages 50 and older. For some reason, Satan is really working on them. And here's why. In October 2018 General Conference, President Nelson said, "No one can do what a righteous woman can do. Women shape the future," he said. "No one can duplicate the influence of a mother." My dear sisters, we need you. We need your strength, your conversion, your conviction, your ability to lead, your wisdom, and your voices. We simply cannot gather Israel without you. And in his talk, A Plea to My Sisters, he said, much of the major growth that is coming to the church in the last days will come because many of the good women of the world will be drawn to the church in large numbers. My dear sisters, you who are our vital associates during this widening up scene, the day that President Kimball foresaw is today. You are the women he foresaw. We need women with the gift of discernment who can view the trends in the world and detect those that, however popular, are shallow or dangerous. We need women who are devoted to shepherding God's children along the covenant path toward exaltation. Women who know how to receive personal revelation, who understand the power and peace of the temple endowment. Women who know how to call upon the powers of heaven. Women who teach fearlessly. Together, we will help prepare the world for the second coming of the Lord. Sisters, do you realize the breadth and scope of your influence when you speak those things that come to your heart and mind as directed by the Spirit? We need women who can detect deception in all its forms. We need women who know how to access the power that God makes available to covenant keepers and who exercise their beliefs with confidence and charity. My dear sisters, nothing is more crucial to your eternal life than your own conversion. It is converted, covenant-keeping women whose righteous lives will increasingly stand out in a deteriorating world, and who will thus be seen as different and distinct in the happiest of ways. And I recall other times where it has been said that women have the most powerful influence on the world. It's the women and the mothers. Satan knows this. That's why he's going after the women. And a lot of my friends who have reached out to me and shared their experiences with me have said, you know what? One thing that we noticed with a lot of these groups and meetings that we went to is that they targeted the women and the children, as they were trying to persuade us and convince us to join their organizations or purchase land out in the desert or whatever it may be. They would distract the husbands and swarm in on the women and say, we just want to make your life easy. We just want you to know that it is our utmost priority to make the women and children happy. They would go to the women. They would pull the women away from their husbands and distract them so that they could fill the women's minds with all of these teachings and persuasions, because they knew that if they could persuade the women, if they could convince the women that this was truth, that this was important, that this was a big deal, that the women would convince their husbands. Think about it. That's exactly how it worked in the Garden of Eden. Satan knew that if he could get to Eve, Eve would persuade Adam. Women are powerful in their influence, and Satan knows this. Now, God knows this as well. He has a plan for his daughters, for the mothers in his kingdom. And Satan is doing all that he can to pull the mothers away so that they have less influence in the kingdom of God and more influence in the kingdom of the devil. I am seeing so many women right now who have sort of just become impatient. They want their goals met right now. They want answers to all of their questions right now. And the only place that they can find that are offering instant, right now answers are people, places, and groups within the New Age movement. It's the New Age movement, the New Age teachings and philosophies that are offering instant, guaranteed joy, happiness, and satisfaction right now. You don't have to wait for it. This is so appealing. And I'm just seeing so many women, way more than men, being pulled off of the covenant path, as I've shared in past videos, down these other paths, chasing after the pretty, sparkly packages. And the more they latch on to these teachings and philosophies of the New Age movement, the more unhappier they are becoming, and they don't even make that connection. I'm seeing so many people that I know personally who are flooding Facebook and flooding Instagram with post after post after post, all within one day, of New Age philosophies and teachings and quotes, pictures of the chakras, videos, research studies, just flooding their feed with all of this stuff, trying to show everyone that, look, this is what brings happiness. This is what I'm seeking after. This is what's going to bring me happiness. You should look into it as well. And they're just throwing it out there. Here, look at this, look at that, look at this, look at that. This is where truth and happiness is right now. This is where it's at. This is where you need to be. But they're not at peace. They're not truly happy. As the days and the weeks and the months and the years continue to pass, they're still pursuing happiness and answers. They haven't found it yet. It's like this revolving door. They just keep going in and out, just around and around in circles, looking for that joy and happiness, claiming that it's there, that it's at their fingertips, but yet they don't have it. It's this emptiness, this void that they just can't fill. And that void won't be filled by New Age teachings and philosophies. It won't be filled by the knowledge of the world, through science or technology, through the law of attraction, through the universe. No, it will only be filled by Jesus Christ. That is the truth. But I'm just seeing this everywhere I go, people all around me that are so heavily steeped in New Age teachings and philosophies, and Eastern medicinal practices, Hinduism, yoga, all of that. And they're not happy. In fact, my sister told me that recently a man in her ward, who she's never seen before, got up in fast and testimony meeting and bore his testimony over the pulpit of energy work. She said he never mentioned a testimony of Jesus Christ or the gospel. It was all about his testimony of yoga and of the chakras. And he went on and on and on and talked about law of attraction, affirmations, all those types of things, and then sat down. She said it was the most bizarre testimony she had ever seen, and it left a strange and eerie feeling in the chapel. She described him as wearing jeans and having dark eyes, but being very handsome and charming. And she said she had this strong feeling that he was moving into their ward to teach these philosophies to the people of her area. She really felt that that's why he was there. I'm seeing this also in Hollywood. A recent example of this is Katy Perry. A couple of years ago, she was featured on a TV segment called The Therapist, where a therapist televised his session with her. And one night I chose to watch this while I was running on the treadmill, just to pass the time. And while I was watching this, I noticed this inner struggle within her. She kept talking about Catherine, who she was born and raised as, and then her stage name, Katy Perry, the one who became successful and wealthy and popular in the world, and how Catherine believes in God, was raised in a Christian household with a Christian background, was taught to pray and have a relationship with Jesus Christ. But then Katy Perry is someone totally different. She is someone who has taken on the teachings and philosophies and ways of the world. And she was saying how there's this turmoil inside of her of these split personalities, how she really wants to be Catherine because that's who she really is, but every time she goes out in public, people are expecting her to be Katy, and she's not always in the mood to be Katy. So she feels like she has to always be someone she's not. And she was talking about this, and every time she would make references to God or her Christian background, and you could see that she was trying to pull out those beliefs now. She was trying to say that that's what I still believe. This therapist with a Hindu name, Dr. Siri Satnam Singh, you can see that he clearly disagrees with Christianity. That's not a part of his belief system. And he throws out these new age terms. Anyways, as she brings up God, Christianity, Jesus, he sort of dismisses that, and he tries to steer her in a different direction, more towards his beliefs, new age beliefs. And it made me sad as I watched that. But then in the comments below, everybody was so happy, and they were saying, oh, he's the best therapist I've ever seen, and oh, he's so good, and look what he's done to help her, and now she's so happy. And it was interesting because I felt the opposite. As I was watching that, she was bringing up God. I believe a good therapist sets aside their own beliefs, their own biases, and they help guide and steer their client within their client's belief system. Just my opinion. And at the very end, he pulls out his angel cards, and he says at the end of every session, I have my clients reach into the basket of angel cards to see what the universe has to say to them, sort of like tarot cards. So she hesitates, but then she reaches into the basket and she pulls out a word that has so much meaning for her that she just cries and becomes emotional. She asks if she can keep that angel card, and he sort of hesitates and says, well, I need that. I kind of need that, or I'm gonna have to buy a new deck of cards. She says, well, I'll just buy you a new deck of cards. And he seems kind of bothered by that. But then over the next couple of years, she seems to follow that path of New Age spiritualism. Not long after that, she becomes engaged to the love of her life. She then heals her relationship with her former best friend Taylor Swift and makes a cameo appearance about this in one of Taylor's music videos. And then recently she releases a music video which is filled with New Age practices. And though she's having fun with it in the video, and it's very positive and upbeat, it sends a message to the world that this is where I found happiness. This is where I found forgiveness. This is the path that I took to be healed. And she shows different therapies that she goes through in the video. Here she shows acupuncture, and then she shows what's known as cupping, which symbolizes healing her wounded heart. And then she's making some kind of a potion that she shows later in the video. Here she is with other people sitting around a bonfire, and they start to drink this potion. And when they drink it, they have a reaction. It looks like she's being possessed and something is taking over her body as her face expressions change and her eyes roll back. Then they all hold hands around the bonfire and they begin swaying back and forth and chanting things. They perform some kind of a ritual and they raise their hands up and make different gestures and signs as though they're calling on the gods. And it's just very much filled with spiritualism and New Age practices. And I can just see that this is so prevalent right now, all throughout the world, everywhere. All right, now I want to share this dream with you that a friend of mine posted in our 11th hour group. At the time that she posted it, she didn't really understand what it meant and she was trying to figure that out. And then after I posted my last couple of videos, the meaning of the dream came to her and I just want to share that with you. So she wrote, I had my first ever dream about a prophet or any gospel figure last night. I dreamt I was at an airport, I think, and saw President Nelson and a whole bunch of security and a swarm of people walking the opposite direction of me. He was a ways away and there was a metal fence, a railing, separating us. I thought in my mind, oh my gosh, that's the prophet. And I longed to just touch his hand, shake his hand, anything. That very moment that I thought that, he stopped, turned, and looked right at me. Then all of a sudden, he wasn't yards away. We were on opposite sides of this metal railing, and he held out his hand, taking mine. I just remember his eyes piercing my soul, and I felt love so strong and just felt immediately that I knew him, and he knew me. He had a twinkle in his eye, and I just couldn't believe how he read my thoughts, but I wasn't surprised. I felt so much peace, and that was it. I needed that so badly. It was so amazing, and I just wanted to share. So she later wrote, Lindsay, I'm seeing this dream now in a whole new light since your video on energy work. I had just completed a master training and was already starting to doubt that path. I know now exactly what the symbolism of my dream means. She also mentioned, I find it amazing that I had this dream last night when I was in the depths of despair about my marriage. Now, I believe I shared an earlier comment that she made in my last video message. She said, I wanted to thank you for your videos. You were dead on so many things, and I think many of those ladies aren't ready to see it. Someday maybe. But all of the subtle deception in the red flag, new age stuff that you pointed out was so dead on and correct. And it definitely illuminated some deception that has been in my life and path, and I'm so grateful for that. Thank you. I am open-minded enough to admit that I may have been deceived, and I'm happy to be able to repent and change things. I do think, unfortunately, that a lot of these ladies just aren't ready to see that possibility. I just want you to know that you helped me more than you know, and I believe it was an answer to my prayers for why my marriage is all of a sudden falling apart right after I became a Reiki master. So she made that connection. I had just become a Reiki master and suddenly my marriage starts falling apart and I start to doubt this path that I'm on. And that night I have a dream that there is a metal fence separating me from the prophet. He's on one side and I'm on the other, and I'm just longing to be with him. And he has this love for me, but there's something separating us, something keeping me away from him. And she made that connection to the energy work. It was the energy work taking her on another path, pulling her away from the prophet. And as she described the love that he had for her, the way that he looked at her, that twinkle in his eye, it was as though she could see the presence of the Savior in the countenance of President Nelson. There was something in the way, an obstacle, a barrier, keeping her from the presence of the Lord. And I'm so grateful that she shared this dream and she shared this connection that she made, because I talked about that in my video messages about how so many people who go down these paths of energy healing, new age, pretty much anything that's connected to chakras, whether it happens right at first or it happens months later, but so many of them begin to experience depression, anxiety, physical problems, health problems, emotional problems, mental problems. I talked about this. I gave lots of examples and stories in those last video messages, including my own. I'm grateful for every little experience and connection that you make and share with me because it adds witness to what it is that I'm sharing. And so many times from what I hear, it's an answer to so many prayers. All right, now also since the last video message, for those of you out there who have a YouTube channel, you know all about this. But there are some changes coming to YouTube. And this is coming down from the federal government, from the FTC. They are cracking down on all YouTube channels starting January 1st. And what they're doing is if you have anything in your videos, anything at all that could interest a child, you have to label those videos as videos for children. Now, all videos that are labeled videos for children come with lots of disadvantages. So the comments get shut down, which is not new for me because YouTube already did that to my channel. And what's strange is I've noticed some of the recent videos suddenly have comments opened up, so you can now comment on some of my videos, but all of my past videos, the commenting is still permanently turned off. And I've had people reaching out to me who are new to my channel saying, I want to comment on your videos. Why do you have your comments turned off? That's not cool. Why do you have them turned off? It makes me not want to watch more of your videos because for me, it's all about the conversation at the bottom of the video. I want to see what people are saying and I want to join in the conversation. And if there's no conversation happening, I lose interest in the message, in the video, and in the channel. And so this has been affecting a lot of channels. So you lose your commenting. You also lose the community option where if people can't comment on your channel, they can go in sort of like on Facebook and start a thread and have a conversation in another place on your YouTube channel. So I have one of those on my channel right now, and that's where some of you have been able to reach me because you can't comment on my videos. Another disadvantage is that they are severely limiting and taking away advertising opportunities. So if you allow commercials to run on your channel, that's being extremely limited and taken away if your videos are labeled for children. So there's a lot of people who make creative content designed for children, which is pretty much a lot of the family vlog channels out there. They do it full time, who are actually shutting down their channels because of that right there. Many of them have quit their jobs and this is what they do full time. Where that monetization is being taken away, they're now going to stop making videos and shutting down their channels. And a lot of those family vloggers are Latter-day Saint families. A lot of them live right here in Utah. And I've sort of thought about that and I thought, well, maybe it's a blessing in disguise. Maybe this is another way that the Lord is guiding us towards the things that are more important and setting aside all of these distractions. It's a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of effort for a lot of these families to put these videos together. So I don't know, maybe now that that's being taken away, it's gonna steer them towards things that are more important in this final hour. I always try to see the glass half full, so that's definitely a possibility. God can always turn the plans of the enemy into a blessing. Now the downside of this is the rules are not black and white, it's very gray. So they basically just leave it up to you to decide if your video is geared towards children or not. But then they give you some examples that raises a lot of concern. So for example, these videos right here that I do, my Happy Lady videos, I feel that they're geared towards adults. However, if I were to mention a story in my video about one of my children, you know, if I were to share an experience and bring up something that might interest a child, talk about my child's birthday or a toy that they received or just something that mentions children, that alone could classify that entire video as a children's video. So that's why there's a lot of people who are really concerned and a little bit scared about how to classify their videos, because if they label it a children's video, they get shut off to all the benefits of YouTube. And when you get shut off from all those benefits, it affects people finding your video, it affects all of your analytics, it affects people being interested in your content and in your channel if they have no way to interact with you. I think one of the other things that you lose is you no longer will get alerts. So if you are subscribed to a channel and you get those video alerts every time they have new content, If those videos or that channel are classified as a children's channel or videos geared to children, you will no longer get alerts when they put out new content and new videos. So out of sight, out of mind, right? You also miss out on the opportunity to put up end screens on the end of your video, which is basically where you can put up links or you can have a video related to that video message pop up. There's lots of other things that they allow you to put at the end of your video that will pop up. So you lose out on that as well. So there's a lot of things you lose out on, which sort of feels like a separation. Kind of reminds me of like the wheat and the tares. So if your heart is really in the channel, if you're doing it because you feel like you have something to contribute that's important, you're going to keep doing it no matter what. Even if you lose out on all of these benefits and options for your channel, you're still going to keep doing it regardless. However, if your motivation was for other reasons, if you were doing it so you could quit your job and do this as a full-time income, well, as soon as they take that away, you're no longer going to have that motivation and drive to keep making those videos. So you're going to move on to something else. So it sort of feels like this separation. It's going to start separating people on YouTube, and it's all going to come down to their motives. That's going to be what either keeps them on YouTube or causes them to shut down their channel and pursue something else. However, there have been a lot of downsides reported about this. For example, all the people that put a lot of time into making good quality, clean family content that families can feel good about watching. You know, there's a lot of children who prefer to watch YouTube channels versus what's on TV. So they subscribe to their favorite channels and videos come out daily, weekly, with whatever it is they're interested in, and they're channels and videos that parents approve and feel good about their kids watching. So for people who want to remain on YouTube and no longer be classified as children's videos or a children's channel so that they can continue to monetize and do it as a full-time job, they're going to start changing their content so it becomes more adult content so they can do that. So let me give you an example. There's a lot of video game channels where gamers will make videos about video games, but they've kept the language clean and they've kept the video games clean so that they will appeal to children because that's their biggest audience, their biggest market. But now, if their videos are classified as videos appealing to children, they lose out on all of that. So in order to keep it, they're now going to have to start adding foul language to their videos. So you're going to start hearing more swearing, more violent video games that are adult only, that have violent content, adult content, so that they can now appeal to a new crowd, a new age group, to make it very obvious that their videos are not for kids. The problem with that is you're going to now start seeing a lot of clean, family-friendly videos and content leave YouTube, and you're going to start seeing more adult videos. So that's the problem. So there were a lot of people complaining about that that was the awesome thing about YouTube is a lot of people were very careful to make their videos and their content clean and centered for children because that was their biggest audience. And now with all of that taken away and they have to be very careful, and if they choose to continue to pursue children audiences, they lose out on all of the benefits. So they have to make a choice. I either shut down my channel and no longer make videos, or I keep my channel, I keep making my videos, but I make it more violent. I add foul language so that I can classify it as adult content. Now the other thing with this is if you classify your video wrong. So if you say, I'm pretty sure this video is geared towards adults. If the FTC or YouTube disagrees, you can be fined up to, it was I think $42,000, $43,000 per violation. So a lot of people are fearful of that. So because of that alone, they're just shutting down their channel because they don't even want to have to deal with that. Now YouTube has already been fined $170 million from the FTC because of all of this. So the FTC is cracking down with all of their regulations, all in the name of safety for children, but at the same time making it very difficult for anyone who has a YouTube channel to keep that going and feel comfortable doing so. So in the next couple weeks, I need to go through every video on my channel and label it either for adults or for children. And I have to make sure I get it right because if I get it wrong, it could be very bad. Anyways, so it's just crazy, all these regulations that are coming down from the government in the name of safety and making it a safer, better world, when really it feels like it's going to have the opposite effect. But they're not only doing this with YouTube, they're doing it with all entertainment platforms. So that's an update since the last video message. I just wanted to share that with you so you could be aware. You might see some changes happening on my channel in the next few weeks, and that would be why. Okay, something else I wanted to share with you since the last video message. A friend of mine texted me on Sunday, November 17th, and I looked down at her text and it had all these excited emojis, so I knew it was some good news. And I read it, and she said that her friend's parents just received their mission call, and they have been called to Adam Andai Amen. Now get this, it said that their call is specifically to prepare for the second coming of the Lord. Wow, right? So I was feeling it, and I reached out to her to verify how legit this was. I don't like to share things that are passed down second, third, fourth, fifth hand. I really try not to do that. So she said, no, we talked to them last night. Our friend, he's a bishop, and he was talking with my husband last night and said, hey, my parents just got called to Adam Andai Amen, and they have been called to prepare for the second coming of the Lord. So that was so exciting. I said to her, wow, just another awesome witness right there. So I wanted to share that with you. And again, that feels like a witness as to what I shared in the last video message about the possibilities with next year being the 200th anniversary of the first vision. All the exciting things that we've been told to look forward to and prepare for the year 2020 as we head into this celebration and commemoration. There's going to be so many things happening, so many possibilities, and we talked about a lot of those things that people are saying, oh, I hope this happens, or I hope that happens. Whatever it is, you know it's going to be good. But we did talk about the Missouri area, Jackson County, the New Jerusalem Temple, all these possibilities of exciting announcements that would definitely kickstart us into that last minute of this last hour. Now I got to visit Adam Andai Amen for the first time this year when I went to Missouri, and it was pretty awesome to be there and feel that peace. It's such a quiet place. I think I said in my video that I didn't even hear birds chirping. There were no bugs. I just heard complete silence. It was the most peaceful place I have ever been to. Anyways, so to hear about this call, it's just another witness that things are in motion. Things are happening. The Lord truly is coming now. He is coming in this last minute of this last hour. I really believe that that's where we're at, and we should be doing all that we can to be spiritually prepared and spiritually ready to receive him when he comes. And I had a thought about that. I haven't had time to look into it, so I'm just going to throw it out there right now. If you're knowledgeable about this, please reach out to me. If it allows you to comment below. But I was wondering if it says anywhere in our church history, in scripture or prophecy, that the New Jerusalem temple must be completed before the Lord returns. Is it possible that he could return while these things are still being built and while they're still expanding? Or is it set in stone that everything must be completed before he returns? Because as much as I try, I can't recall in my mind ever reading that everything must be fully completed before he comes. And I thought, wow, there could be a real possibility that he returns as the process is still unfolding. Zion is still continuing to grow and expand and be built. So anyways, I just wanted to put that out there. If you have any thoughts about that, please share. Okay, so also since the last video message, I've just been reading along in order in my Book of Mormon. Every time I finish it, I start it again, as I'm sure most of you do as well. So I happen to be in 1 Nephi chapter 14, and it's a scripture I have always loved. As you can see from my screenshots, I have lots underlined and highlighted and notes, because every time I revisit this chapter, I always find something new and valuable. So as I was reading through this, again, I was marking some things, and then later on that week, I was watching that video. Is it LDS Living? They had a video. It was Emily Bell Freeman doing a live video. She had a guest speaker there who was sharing on the topic of women and the priesthood, and with what President Nelson recently shared with all the sisters at Women's Conference. So they were talking about that and having a discussion. and she brought up 1 Nephi chapter 14. And so I realized, oh my goodness, that's again a chapter I was also visiting this week because that's where I was at in my scriptures. And not only that, but a third light bulb popped up that had to do with 1 Nephi chapter 14. So it just felt like all the arrows were pointing, this scripture is important right now. Talk about it in your video message. So real quick, I just want to share with you some things. I've got it up on the screen right here if you want to follow along. So I'm going to start down at verse 6, and it says, "Therefore, woe be unto the Gentiles, if it so be that they harden their hearts against the Lamb of God. For the time cometh, saith the Lamb of God, that I will work a great and a marvelous work among the children of men, a work which shall be everlasting, either on the one hand or on the other." So I wrote at the top there, either on the right or the left. You only have two hands. So he's saying either on the one hand or on the other. So either on the right or the left. The minute I heard that, I thought about politics, the right or the left, right? A work is happening, and whether you stand on the right or on the left, this work that is happening will be everlasting. And scriptures always tell us that you want to be found at the right hand of the Lord. You want to be found at his right hand, not at his left hand. But he goes on to say, either to the convincing of them unto peace and life eternal, so I'm thinking right hand, or left hand, unto the deliverance of them to the hardness of their hearts and the blindness of their minds, unto their being brought down into captivity, and also into destruction, both temporally and spiritually, according to the captivity of the devil, of which I have spoken. Now, over these last few video messages, we've talked a lot about wolves in sheep's clothing that are working really hard right now in this last hour, in this last minute, to pull people off the path, to put up barriers, metal fences between us and the Lord. And whether we realize it's happening or not doesn't prevent us from avoiding the consequences. So he goes on to say, "And it came to pass that when the angel had spoken these words, he said unto me, Rememberest thou the covenant of the Father unto the house of Israel? I said unto him, Yea. And it came to pass that he said unto me, Look, and behold that great and abominable church, which is the mother of abominations, whose founder is the devil." Now I believe I underlined it on the next page, but focus on that key word, mother. "And he said unto me, Behold, there are saved two churches only. The one is the church of the Lamb of God, and the other is the church of the devil." So again, it reminds me, right hand, left hand. There's two hands, two sides, black and white, no gray, two churches. "Wherefore, whoso belongeth not to the church of the Lamb of God belongeth to that great church, which is the mother of abominations. And she," there it is again, she, feminine, female, "is the whore of all the earth." Okay, so again, there is no fence sitting. Just as in my friend's dream, she wasn't sitting on the metal railing, she was on the other side of it. So you're either on the right side or the left side. You're on one side or the other, but there is no middle ground. Okay, so it came to pass, I looked and beheld the whore of all the earth, and she sat upon many waters. She had dominion over all the earth, among all nations, kindreds, tongues, and people. And it came to pass that I beheld the church of the Lamb of God, and its numbers were few, because of the wickedness and abominations of the whore who sat upon many waters. Nevertheless, I beheld that the church of the Lamb, who were the saints of God, were also upon all the face of the earth. And their dominions upon the face of the earth were small. So they were small in number, but they were spread out all over the world, because of the wickedness of the great whore whom I saw. Okay, so right now let's talk about these saints spread out all over the world. And as we read on, we're going to find out that they are the covenant people. They are called the saints of God. They have entered into covenants with the Lord, and they're small in number, but they cover the whole earth. All right, so the church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We are the Latter-day Saints, the saints of these last days spoken about and prophesied about in Scripture. We are a worldwide church. We are called the Latter-day Saints. We are the saints of the Lord, and we are upon all the face of the earth, but our numbers in those places are small. And it came to pass that I beheld that the great Mother of Abominations did gather together multitudes upon the face of all the earth, among all the nations of the Gentiles, to fight against the Lamb of God. So to fight against the Lord's church. And I'm feeling it. And it came to pass that I, Nephi, beheld, and I circled right here, the power. We're going to talk about that. I beheld the power of the Lamb of God. So I beheld the power of the Lord's church. It had a power, and I saw that it descended upon the saints, the Latter-day Saints, who were scattered upon all the face of the earth. And they were armed with righteousness. That was their armor, righteousness. And with the power of God in great glory. Now, it doesn't say just part of the saints or just the male saints, just the brethren, right? It simply just speaks of the saints. So I want to point out that he speaks of two things. He says here, this power descended not only upon the saints of the church, but also upon the covenant people of the Lord. So the saints who have taken out those covenants and entered into those promises with the Lord. So those who have entered into baptism and have been through the temple and taken out their endowment and have continued on that covenant path. And it came to pass that I beheld that the wrath of God was poured out upon that great and abominable church, the church of the devil, insomuch that there were wars and rumors of wars among all the nations and kindreds of the earth. And as there began to be wars and rumors of wars among all the nations, which belonged to the Mother of Abominations, the angel spake unto me, saying, Behold, the wrath of God is upon the mother of harlots. And behold, thou seest all these things. And when that day cometh that the wrath of God is poured out upon the mother of harlots, which is the great and abominable church of all the earth, whose founder is the devil, then at that day the work of the Father shall commence in preparing the way for the fulfilling of his covenants which he hath made to his people who are of the house of Israel. Oh, so I'm feeling it right now. I'm feeling it really strong right now. So when I read that scripture, it gets me even more excited to visit the temple even more, to go as often as possible to be reminded of what those covenants are, because he's saying right here, when you see this sign, when you see this church, this Mother of Abominations taking over the earth, I will start to pour out my wrath upon the church of the devil. And when I do that, in that day, you will see the Father fulfilling his end of the covenant, fulfilling his promises. So what are those promises? Again, I encourage you to return to the temple as often as possible to hear what those promises are, because now they're going to start being fulfilled. We're going to start seeing those come to pass. So this is exciting, because if you've been true and faithful and have stayed on that covenant path, keeping every commandment and remaining faithful in those covenants, renewing them as often as possible, repenting daily and turning your heart to the Lord, you are about to see those promises come to pass and be fulfilled. Our leaders have been telling us time and time again over these last couple of general conferences, stay on the covenant path. It is so worth it. Don't get off that path. Stay on it, because we're now about to get to the good stuff. And so I love this. In my last couple of video messages, I talked about all the ways that people are being pulled off the path right now, because Satan is aware of this too. He understands scripture. He knows about this prophecy. He knows this is supposed to happen. And so that's why he's doing all that he can to pull people off of that path so that they don't experience what it is that our Heavenly Father has prepared for us and is ready to give us in this prophesied day that we live in. You don't want to get off that path. You want to do everything that you can to repent, get rid of things in your life that shouldn't be there, get rid of things that are putting a fence or a barrier between you and the Lord. And we've talked about a lot of those barriers and obstacles and red flags in my last few videos. So if it helps to go back and watch those videos again, I highly recommend it. But you don't want to have anything between you and the Lord in this last day. You want to be with those who have been true and faithful and have kept their covenants, have kept their end of the promise. So if you've even forgotten what it was you covenanted to do, what your end of the promise is, that's more motivation to return to the temple as often as possible to hear what it is you promised to do. Okay, so now I want to talk about that word, that key word, mother, mother of abominations. The church of the devil is referred to as a she, as a harlot. Now it reminded me of my recent blog post that I shared in my last video message. I'll have a link to that again down below if you want to check it out if you haven't already. And there was a part in there where I talked about the book of the Acts of Thomas, about that ancient text, and how in there a lot of people have taken those verses and reworded them. They've changed them to fit with what it is they're trying to sell, what it is they're trying to promote, what they're trying to teach. So they're twisting all these teachings and doctrines in Christianity and using that to pull people away by taking old texts out of the books that didn't make it into the Bible, knowing that people aren't going to be able to reference the Bible because these books aren't in there, and they're using those twisted words to sell their own philosophies. And so I talked about that, and here's a screenshot because this came to mind as I was studying this chapter. So you see I wrote on it 1 Nephi 14, and there's a prayer in those scriptures where it says, "Come, compassionate mother, come, communion of the male, come, she that revealeth the hidden mysteries, come, mother of the 7 houses, that thy rest may be in the 8th house." So anyways, as I got thinking about mother of the 7 houses, and I got thinking about the mother of abominations, that great and abominable church, the church of the devil. Okay, so in 1 Nephi chapter 14, the Lord goes on to talk about John. He prophesies and says one of the Lord's apostles will go on to see all of this and write about it. So we need to study that. We need to see what it is that he says about that. And we know that that was John the Revelator. He wrote in the book of Revelation all about what he was shown about our day. And he talks about this mother of abominations. In Revelation chapter 17, he goes into detail about this. And I've talked about this in past video messages this year. So in verse 1, "And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying, Come hither. I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication. And the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication." And he goes on to describe the woman as wearing purple and red, and decked out with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness. And I shared in a video earlier this year, if I can find it, I'll put a link to it down below, but I talked about how in the music industry, you'll see a lot of imagery in music videos and in the entertainment industry that are making reference to this description right here. You'll see the women riding on the beast, wearing red and purple and wearing diamonds and pearls and jewels and holding the gold cup, sitting on the throne. Well, it's all in reference to this. "And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. When I saw her, I wondered with great admiration." And then he goes on to talk about the 10 horns, which are 10 kings of power. They receive power as kings for 1 hour with the beast. And I talked about in a video message earlier this year about the 10 nations who have joined together to create a European army as a military alliance headed by the leader of France. And there are 10 nations, so 10 heads of power that make up this European army, this alliance. And it says in verse 13, these have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. So they are united in purpose and in power. It is these that shall make war with the Lamb, with the church of Jesus Christ. And the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is the Lord of lords and the King of kings. And they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. And I'm feeling it. Oh, I am feeling it. All right. Anyways, I talked about all of this earlier this year in another video message, and it goes on to talk about how the 10 horns actually hate the whore. So at first it sounds as though they may be friends with her or kind towards her, you know, keeping the peace, but then there comes a day when they make her desolate and naked. They eat her flesh and burn her with fire. So they destroy her. And it goes on to say, and the woman which thou sawest is that great city. So the church of the devil is headquartered in a great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. Now, just to speed things up, in that video message, I talked about the clues as to what city this is and the reference to what this great and abominable church is. We know that Babylon is of the world, and when it comes down to it, if you don't belong to the church of the Lamb of God, if you're not on his side, there's no middle ground. You belong to this church. You belong to Babylon, to the church of the devil. And so that covers so many areas. But if we want to get specific and we want to talk about this great city and all the other clues that John gives us in the book of Revelation, I talked about that in a video message earlier this year. Now, in this screenshot that I just shared, about the Acts of Thomas in the scripture where he says, come compassionate mother, the mother of the 7 houses. And real quick, I just want to say that I talked about in my blog post, I'm just going to go ahead and read what I wrote. The Acts of Thomas should not be confused with the early sayings Gospel of Thomas. Like other apocryphal acts combining popular legend and religious propaganda, the work attempts to entertain and instruct. So there's good reason as to why these texts never came forward and were included in what we have today as the Bible. There's been a lot of legend and propaganda put into these texts, so they're just not credible. And after reading some of this, I wrote, clearly this doctrine from these texts do not align with the doctrine of the New Testament, nor do they align with the doctrine of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So there's not a lot of value in reading them. But anyways, as I heard Mother of the 7 houses, I was reminded of the description of the Mother of Abominations. In verse 9 of Revelation 17, it says that the woman sits upon 7 mountains. In other versions and interpretations, you'll see it written as 7 hills. The woman sits upon 7 hills. And in the book of Revelation, it talks about the city that she belongs to, the city that she rules from. What city all throughout history has been known as the city of 7 hills? Well, that would be Rome. What church is headquartered in the city of Rome? Well, that would be the Roman Catholic Church. What church uses the colors red and purple as a symbol of status and position within the church? Well, as you can see on the screenshot that I've shared before in past videos, it is the Roman Catholic Church that wears the purple and red, which John describes when he sees this woman who sits upon the 7 hills wearing purple and red. And he talks about this church being adorned in gold and jewels. And you think about these magnificent cathedrals that are just covered from top to bottom in gold. And the gold and the jewels, the precious stones, it all symbolizes wealth and power. And then John goes on to talk about the sins and the filthiness and the fornication that the woman, the mother of abominations, participates in. As he goes on to describe this church of the devil, he talks about fornication and the sin that this church of Babylon is involved in. And I have a link down below to an article that I discovered that goes into even more detail about this. And so it says Rome and its 7 hills are just one part of the meaning of the scripture. The 7 continents of the earth is another. The 7 continents form the 7 hills, which human civilization has mounted itself upon. And all the symbolism of the Bible seems to be directed towards this larger image. And he goes on to point out the beast's 7 heads not only represent the kings and the kingdoms dedicated to the beast's service, they are brought to a focus in 7 particular world leaders who have committed their energy to the captivity and destruction of the house of Israel. Now, according to this article, he says that has already happened. The first 6 heads were Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece through Syria, and Rome. The 7th head is believed to have been Germany. And beyond that, there is an 8th head yet to come. Anyways, I'll have a link to this article down below if you want to read more about this perspective, but I don't want to stray off the topic. So I'm just going to rewind it again. When I was talking about paying attention to those keywords, mother, the mother of abominations, the mother. And as I kept hearing mother, I kept thinking of the Roman Catholic Church and their prayers to Mother Mary, how they believe that in order to get to the Savior, they have to first go through his mother. They have to commune with Mother Mary, where we believe we only need to go through the Savior to get to our Heavenly Father. So the only way to our Father in heaven is through his Son, Jesus Christ. That's what we believe. But in the Roman Catholic Church, they believe that you have to go through Mary in order to get to Jesus. So I kept thinking about this mother, this adoration for Mother Mary, and how there's this, what the rest of the world calls mother worship or Mary worship. And then it got me thinking about the New Age world outside of religion. And I talked about this in a past video message. It's the video where I talked about Mother Goose. And I talked about this connection of Mother Goose to, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, Mother Gaia, who is the mother of the earth. And she has other names, but it's this mother goddess. It's this worship of the divine feminine, and there's so many groups and branches and churches and breakoffs of people who worship this mother goddess, and it's very much a part of New Age. So I got thinking about this universal mother, and I thought, I wonder if there's this connection. So not only do you have the worship of Mary and Mary as the mother, if you were just speaking about the Roman Catholic Church, but if you're speaking about Babylon as a whole, then this mother might have a different name. And so I got thinking about all these different titles and names that they give this divine feminine being, this entity that is worshipped in so many circles, especially in New Age. And I came across this website of a woman who happens to be, go figure, a channeler, just like we talked about in the last video message. And she talks about this Mother Mary, this universal figure. And so I just happened to do a Google search and it took me right to her website. And I think what she says speaks for itself, what all this is about. So I came straight to this page on her website where she is supposedly channeling Mary. And it says, greetings, I am Mother Mary, Universal Mother, Mother Love, Mother of all. Welcome, my beloved friends, to my garden, to the garden of my heart, and to the garden of my creation. She goes on to talk about her plan, how she has this plan that's about to unfold upon the earth. What is this starting to sound like, right? It's reminding me a lot of Revelation chapter 17. And she talks about this plan that's about to unfold upon the earth. And she says this particular plan of unfoldment for Earth, for Terra Gaia, also known as Mother Earth, has been in process for millennia, for eons, thousands of your years. So I wish very briefly, my beloved ones, to take you back to what I was thinking of. And I use this term very specifically. For understand, I am the mother of creation, and in our instance, in our collective energy, thought, directed thought, what you think of as intent, for us there is no difference between thought, heart, mind, feeling. The thought was born that I wish to have the perfect place for my entire legion of light to play, the entire angelic realm. She goes on to talk about her son Lucifer and his fall and all of this being a part of her plan. And it's just interesting that you don't hear anywhere in here about the Father. It's all about a female God. It's all about the divine feminine, the female God, and how her plan is about to unfold upon the earth. So there it was. That was my witness as to this divine feminine that spreads all out across this Church of Babylon in so many areas. In another search, the name Sophia came up. Sophia is a central idea in Hellenistic philosophy and religion, Platonism, Gnosticism, and Christian theology, originally carrying a meaning of cleverness, skill. Sophia is the Greek goddess of mythology, archetype of spiritual wisdom in women's spirituality circles. So you'll hear a lot about this worship of Sophia. Sophia is over spiritual wisdom. She is also viewed in many of these circles of worship as the divine feminine. So a lot of times when you hear this term, the divine feminine, it all connects to this worship of Sophia, Mother Gaia, Mother Mary. It's this female worship. Okay, so as I was thinking about the name Sophia, I thought about this. Here is Sophia, the social humanoid robot. Isn't it interesting that she was given the name Sophia? She was developed by a Hong Kong-based company and activated on February 14th, Valentine's Day, the day of love, 2016. In October 2017, Sophia became the first robot to receive citizenship of any country. In November 2017, Sophia was named the United Nations Development Program's first ever innovation champion and is the first non-human to be given any United Nation title. So here is her connection to the United Nations. So I'm just seeing all these things coming together that remind me so much of everything that John talks about in the book of Revelation. We have this artificial intelligence that is heavily supported by the United Nations, the UN. Anyways, I think about a lot of this other technology and artificial intelligence and how they're all female. You have Alexa, you have Siri, and you have Sophia. And this is technology and artificial intelligence that we bring into our homes, and in doing so, allow others to have access into our homes and hear our conversations, hear what it is we're talking about, see what it is we're doing. So I'm thinking about this artificial intelligence, and I'm thinking about these connections to the United Nations. And I start to think about this church, this great and abominable church that is going to persecute the saints of God and the church of the Lamb. And I start thinking about this one world religion that's kicking off next year. I believe it's next May of 2020 with Pope Francis, and he's bringing leaders from all over the world, leaders of various religions, to come together and enter into a covenant to create this one world religion where everyone decides, you know what, truly we all worship the same God. Doesn't matter what you call your God or what I call my God, it's really all the same God. So really, we all are the same. We're all one. And so he's starting this one world religion, and he's trying to get all these people on board. And as I started pondering and thinking about that, I thought that, you know, that would be a great way for the United Nations to use this, to partner with this, to bring the rest of the world into one. So not only do you have the one world government, but you have the one world religion. And I can see how this is happening. And so as I did some research on this, I've got some screenshots right here. I read about Pope Francis's involvement in the United Religions Initiative known as the URI, which is financially funded by George Soros and Bill Gates. Now, it's been a while since I brought up these names, but in past videos, I've talked about this. So continuing reading, it says, the Pope's involvement fits neatly with his other efforts for world political and religious unity. URI boasts of 200 chapters in 80 countries and works closely with the United Nations on mutual initiatives promoting globalization. Pope Francis has been successfully executing the Vatican's well-defined strategy to create a one world religion. Now he is using his global influence and power to establish a one world government. So again, this aligns with 1 Nephi chapter 14 and Revelation chapter 17, where they talk about this Mother of Abominations, this great and abominable church that rules over all the nations and seeks to persecute and destroy the saints of God, the saints of the Church of the Lamb. During a speech on May 8th before the members of the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences, Pope Francis demanded that a new supranational, legal constituted body enforce climate change policies and other worldwide threats. He advocated a policy of decreased national sovereignty and increased global unity, claiming that planetary problems are exacerbated by an excess demand for sovereignty on the part of states. The Pope is trying to convince the world that our only hope for peace, prosperity, and planetary salvation is to surrender our national sovereignty. So he's basically saying, instead of being sovereign nations, let's all become one. Instead of having separate countries with separate rulers and leaders, let's become one world. No more countries, no more borders. We'll just become one world with one leader, one government, and one religion. Anyways, we've talked about all of this before, but it started to resurface in my mind as I was pondering on all of this. And so as I got thinking about all of this and how Pope Francis is promoting no more sovereign nations, just everyone coming together as one world, it made me think of CalExit. CalExit, sort of similar to Brexit, is California trying to break off from the United States. I've got a link down below if you want to read more about that, but this is something that's been going for a while now, just not so much talked about all the time. CalExit is also known as Yes California, and the president of Yes California said that the group plans to go through the United Nations to seek independence because they don't believe that Congress would sign off on a California exit plan. So there again, you have the United Nations connected to all of this, and you see this plan piece by piece for there to be no more sovereign states or nations, just everyone breaking off and becoming independent under the sovereignty of the United Nations, and eventually a global government. Okay, so I want to go back to 1 Nephi chapter 14, and in verse 13, where it talks about this great mother of abominations who is spread out across the face of all the earth, comes to fight against the Lamb of God. And in verse 14, it talks about the power that is upon the saints of God, the covenant people of the Lord. They are armed with righteousness and the power of God. Okay, so there's a footnote that references Doctrine and Covenants, section 38, verses 32 through 38. And in there, it talks about being endowed with that power from on high. It's talking about the endowment. That endowment is that gift that we receive in the temple. We are endowed with the power of God. So in 1 Nephi chapter 14, when he talks about the day that cometh when the wrath of God is poured out upon the mother of harlots, he says, in that day, the work of the Father shall commence in preparing the way for the fulfilling of his covenants. And so let's talk about that for a minute. When you click on the footnote, it refers to the Abrahamic covenant, and it references Mormon chapter 8, verses 21 and 41, which says, and he that shall breathe out wrath and strifes against the work of the Lord and against the covenant people of the Lord, who are the house of Israel, and shall say, we will destroy the work of the Lord, and the Lord will not remember his covenant, which he hath made unto the house of Israel. Behold, the sword of vengeance hangeth over you, and the time soon cometh that he avengeth the blood of the saints upon you, for he will not suffer their cries any longer. So the Father's work shall be commenced. And we know this latter-day work has been taking place ever since the restoration began. And this latter-day work is the restoration of the house of Israel on both sides of the veil. Not just here in this world, on this earth, but on the other side of the veil with all those who have passed away. And we are involved in this great work. And the footnote for work references 3 Nephi chapter 21. And in verse 23 it says, and they shall assist my people, the remnant of Jacob, and also as many of the house of Israel as shall come. that they may build a city which shall be called the New Jerusalem. So we can see how this blueprint has been laid out before us, and we can kind of follow this timeline, and we see how the Lord is setting this up in our day to prepare us for the return of the Lord. So as we pay attention, especially next year in the year 2020, and we watch carefully and closely as to what's happening in world events, we also need to be paying attention to what's happening in the Lord's kingdom, in the church of the Lamb of God. And as we watch, we're going to see this blueprint coming together. We're going to see these things being established, the city of the New Jerusalem being built at the same time while the church of the devil tries to destroy it all and interrupt what is happening. But at that time, God pours out his wrath upon the entire earth, upon the Mother of Abominations, the church of the devil, and that great city burns. The land is left desolate. A lot of times we tend to put our focus on what's happening in the world events, and sometimes it can overwhelm us. It definitely distracts us from what the Lord is doing, and we begin to forget about all the good that is happening, everything that the Lord is doing. At the same time, all of this darkness is happening. But I just want to make a suggestion. Every time you turn on the news or you come across a headline that is discouraging or just makes your heart sink, and it's in line with all of this, right? All of this last days stuff. Instead of going down that road of despair and hopelessness and fear and all of that, let that be a reminder that every time something dark happens, every time some of this last days prophecy is being fulfilled right before your eyes, just know that something good is happening in that moment. Something good is being unleashed. The kingdom is being built. The blueprint is coming together. And truthfully, that darkness is just a witness of all the good that is happening. Because if it weren't so, there wouldn't be that need for the darkness to try and compete and distract and counteract what God is doing. Okay, so now that we're on the topic of signs and events, I'm gonna roll right in to the next part of the video, which is signs and events. So now remember, in the last video message, I talked about how I kept seeing, everywhere I looked, I kept seeing headlines about Popeyes, the restaurant. And I mentioned that, and I shared some of the recent headlines at that time where violence was taking place between the customers and the employees, usually in relation to a chicken sandwich. So I kept wondering, why does this keep happening? Why do I keep seeing story after story in the news about Popeyes on the front page headlines? And I talked about how all of these locations where this violence was happening was taking place in the middle of the country over to the east. And that week, a cold front was to come through, and there was supposed to be record-breaking cold temperatures. And it reminded me again of the hearts of men waxing cold and losing that love for each other, that second great commandment. So I kept thinking there's got to be something with the word Popeyes and chicken. What's going on here? I just keep seeing this and seeing this. Now, after I published that video, the next day, another Popeye story came up on the front headlines of the news. And again, it was another story. This time, I think it was customer was at the drive-through window and their order got messed up, so they were trying to resolve it, but the employee didn't want to resolve it. So the car behind that customer got into a confrontation with that customer, and it got heated and physical and violent. And in every single story, the police are called. So anyways, I threw it out there and just said, if you've been seeing this too, or you have any thoughts about it, I'd love to hear. Please share. Well, it was so funny because last week my sister called me and she said, oh my goodness, I think I figured out that Popeyes connection. And she said it was so funny. Her son actually is leaving on a mission today, right now. And she said, my son came to me the other night, and he never talks about the news with me, so this was so out of the ordinary for him. And he came to me and he said, Mom, I really want to show you something. And she was busy, or she tried to brush it aside, but he's like, no, Mom, I want to show this to you right now. And so she came over, and he had a video about Adam Schiff. I'm going to show you a picture right here in case you don't know who Adam Schiff is. He's the guy who was leading the impeachment process against President Trump. And as you've probably seen, as we all have seen, he has these crazy eye expressions in just about every photograph that is taken of him. And a lot of people say, oh, he looks possessed. His eyes are so scary. He has creepy eyes. They're popping out of his head all the time. And if you search it, there's a lot of parodies. I think Fox has done a lot of parodies about his eyes popping out. And so her son wanted to show her this video and said, Mom, look at this guy. His eyes are popping out of his head. He has popping eyes. And right when she heard that, she heard Popeyes. Popeyes. His eyes are popping out. He has popping eyes. He is Popeyes. Then I saw it in the headlines. As you can see right here, it says, Representative Elise Stefanik makes Adam Schiff's eyes pop out of his sockets with hypocrisy on the whistleblower. And I've been seeing it ever since. Here it is on the back of a bag of spinach that we purchased at the grocery store. She said, oh my goodness, I feel like this has to do with this impeachment trial. And so if you compare these Popeyes news stories to what's happening with this impeachment trial, you see some incredible parallels. You see the division that's happening. You see the contention that's happening. The loss of that second great commandment to love thy neighbor. You're seeing a lack of respect. You're seeing hatred, pointing fingers, shouting, blaming, accusing. And then where does the chicken sandwich come into play? Today, December 3rd, is this headline, Kellyanne Conway playing chicken with Adam Schiff. And it says, Kellyanne Conway has promised to represent President Trump at upcoming impeachment hearings, but only if the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, is called to testify. Is Adam Schiff going to testify? Because he is a fact witness. That would be great, the senior Trump advisor had told reporters on Monday, and then Conway made an offer. I'll tell you what, if Adam Schiff testifies, I'll show up on behalf of the White House. Anyways, I believe we are watching a pivotal moment on the timeline of history play out right in front of us. And as our leaders have told us, we need to keep this nation in our prayers. We need to keep the leaders of our nation in our prayers because the adversary is hard at work and he never sleeps. He is on full attack mode right now against the kingdom of God and all who play a role in bringing it to pass on the earth. And I heard someone point out the other day with President Trump, they said, you know what, whether you love him or you hate him, it doesn't matter because clearly the Lord has been using him to pave the way for his plans. Everything that he's been trying to change and improve and make better, all is part of that preparation for building up the kingdom of God upon the earth and preparing this continent for the building of the New Jerusalem to prepare for the return of the Lord. So whether you love him or you hate him, what he is doing for this nation plays a key role in accomplishing the Lord's work. So this is pivotal right now. What we see playing out is a real spiritual battle of the Lord's church versus the church of the devil coming to a head. So we're seeing that happen right now in real time. Okay, something else that just came across my mind and I'm just starting to ponder it, so I don't have a lot of information about it, but I wanted to put it out there in case you have some thoughts about it. I'd love to hear from you. I had written a blog post recently, I talked about it in my last video message, where I talk about that world that encompasses all of New Age, energy healing, yoga, all those Eastern practices that are all centered on chakra balancing, and that believe of that universal life force energy, also referred to as God, the divine, the universe, source, all of that. I had written a blog post about that and I called it A Deception of Titanic Proportions. And I made that comparison to the Titanic and what happened with that great ship, how it went down and no one saw it coming. And I had mentioned in that blog post, and I think I even talked about it in my last video message, how there is the new Titanic that is being built right now and it's going to launch in a couple of years. So the name of the navigation company that launched the Titanic was White Star Line, which was a British shipping company. Titanic 2, or Titanic II, is owned by a company called Blue Star Line out of Brisbane, Australia. And as I got thinking about that, I kept thinking Blue Star, that just rings a bell. It's bringing up something in my mind. Now, Titanic II is expected to set sail in 2022. So I'm thinking 2022, Blue Star. So as I'm pondering this, I come across a news article that says a new star is set to appear in the year 2022. And I'm just going to reference some news articles. It says a new star is expected to appear in 2022 in a blaze of light called a nova. It will be the brightest heavenly body visible in the nighttime sky for 6 months. It will be the first time in recorded history that a celestial event of this kind will be witnessed by the naked eye. And I'm feeling it. It says that this new star will appear in the constellation of Cygnus, which is also known as the Northern Cross. The cross. Wow. So I have to go back and reference a past journal entry a couple years ago where I had a personal experience, a personal revelation about Cygnus and the Northern Cross. And at the time, as much as I pondered it, I had no idea what it meant. So now I'm going to go back and find that journal entry and see what it is I wrote, because here it is being brought up again. Okay, now this has also made headlines in Jewish news, especially Jewish prophecy. I was directed to a website called breakingisraelnews.com. And it says, new star to appear in night sky, heralding Balaam's prophecy of Messiah. And there's a scripture, Psalms 147, verse 4. He counteth the number of the stars, he giveth them all their names. Now this news article was from January 2017. And it says 5 years from now, the light from the ancient collision of 2 stars will reveal a brand new star in the night sky. According to Jewish esoteric sources, this is precisely the celestial phenomenon which will accompany the arrival of the Messiah. The new star expected to appear in 2022 in a blaze of light called a nova. Beyond its scientific uniqueness, the appearance of the new star could have much bigger implications for the earthbound. One prominent rabbi told Breaking Israel News, pointing to a biblical prophecy of Balaam, which hails the appearance of a new star as a precursor to Messiah. Quote, I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not nigh. There shall step forth a star out of Yaakov, and a scepter shall rise out of Yisrael, and shall smite through the corners of Moab, and break down all the sons of Seth. Rabbi Yosef Berger, rabbi of King David's tomb on Mount Zion, cited Rabbi Moses ben Maimon, known by the acronym Rambam, the foremost Torah authority of the 12th century, whose rulings are still used as the basis for much of Jewish law. The Rambam brings this verse about a star appearing as proof that the Messiah will come one day. Rabbi Berger told Breaking Israel News, but he says it will come from Jacob and not from Esau, more specifically from the tribe of Judah. Even more incredibly, the Zohar, the foundational work of Jewish mysticism, predicts in detail the color and type of stars which will appear. The Zohar states explicitly that the messianic process will be accompanied by several stars appearing. The new star, announced last week by Larry Molnar, a professor of astronomy at Calvin College in Michigan, noted that the orbital period was decreasing at an accelerating rate. It is a binary star, or 2 stars orbiting a central point. Molnar described it as 2 peanuts sharing a single shell, leading him to understand that the 2 stars were moving closer to each other. Based on a previous case of binary stars, Molnar predicted that the 2 stars would collide in 2022, resulting in a massive explosion. The collision will release as much energy as the sun releases in its entire lifetime, Molnar said in a video about the discovery. When the 2 finally collide, it will create a new star, a red nova. The star's brightness will increase 10,000-fold, making it one of the brightest points in the heavens for 6 months, after which it will fade and remain as a smaller dot in the sky. It's a 1 in a million chance that you can predict an explosion, Molnar said. It's never been done before. Though the nova will appear in a few years, the actual event took place 1,800 years ago. It has taken nearly 2 millennia for the light from the collision to reach the Earth. Wow. There's definitely some meaning in that. Then I'm in YouTube and all of a sudden here I see a video that says NASA announces city-killing asteroid could hit Earth in May of 2022. And the estimated date for this happening is May 6, 2022. It says NASA said that the asteroid is the size of the Great Pyramids of Giza. I'll have links to all of this down below, but isn't it interesting? All of these signs in the heavens happening in the year 2022. You have the launch of the Titanic by Blue Star Line. You have the new star appearing. You have a possible asteroid hitting the Earth all around the same time. And here's just a little background on the constellation Cygnus, where that new star will appear. In Greek mythology, Cygnus has been identified with several different legendary swans. So this constellation is also known as the swan. It's Greek for the swan. In Greek mythology, Zeus disguised himself as a swan to seduce Leda, the Spartan king's wife. And Orpheus was also transformed into a swan after his murder and was said to have been placed in the sky next to his lyre. And the king Cygnus was also transformed into a swan. The Greeks also associated this constellation with the tragic story of Phaeton, the son of the sun god, who demanded to ride his father's sun chariot for a day, but he was unable to control the reins, and so Zeus destroyed the chariot. And the myth goes on to say that Phaeton's close lover grieved bitterly for many days. She collected his bones, gave him a proper burial, and the gods were touched by this, and so they turned him into a swan and placed him among the stars. And in Ovid's Metamorphosis, there are 3 people named Cygnus who are all transformed into swans. Something else that I learned that I hesitated to share just because I have such a bad taste in my mouth for this topic because of my past experiences that I've shared in recent videos, but I still feel there's some value in it. So anyways, in Hinduism, there is a period of time called the Muhurta, which lasts from 4:24 a.m. to 5:12 a.m., which is also called the Brahma Muhurta, which translates to the moment of the universe. And the star system in correlation to this is the Cygnus Constellation. And they believe and they teach that this is a highly successful time of the day to do any task or to start the day. So a lot of them will meditate during this time. Now, some interesting facts about the Cygnus Constellation. This constellation is known for not only its planets, but its hundreds and hundreds of stars. It has more than any other constellation. There's also a system within this constellation known as the Kepler 11 system. Sort of reminds me of the 11th hour. It's also known for another star system that's visible to the naked eye called Goose 777. And that stood out to me as well. But within the Cygnus constellation, it's the Kepler 22 system that is the most notable because it has a planet that is believed to be the first ever Earth twin planet ever discovered. But to me, the most significant thing about this constellation is the fact that it's called the Northern Cross because it looks like a cross. And this Northern Cross has a symbolic meaning to Christians because every year before Christmas, it sits upon the horizon in the northwestern sky for observers in northern latitudes to see. And it's in this Northern Cross where the new star will appear in 2022. So the asteroid is estimated for May 6, 2022. Now there isn't a month or an exact date pinpointed for the new star that's to appear in 2022. It said it's even possible that it could happen prior to or right after 2022. So then as I'm thinking about this all again, and I'm thinking about stars and blue star line and blue star, suddenly it pops into my mind the blue star prophecy of the Hopi Indians. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this prophecy before. Now keep in mind there is criticism attached to this prophecy, and that criticism is that there's no reference to this blue star prophecy in relation to the Hopi prior to a book that was released in 1963 by author Frank Waters and his book called Book of the Hopi. But in his book, he talks about a Methodist pastor named David Young who picked up a Hopi hitchhiker named Whitefeather in 1958 and then wrote a pamphlet based on his memory of their conversation. And Whitefeather told him about 9 signs that are to happen before the earth is purified and a new world begins. So here they are. The first sign is the coming of the white-skinned man. Number 2, the lands will see the coming of spinning wheels filled with voices. So I have images off to the side that many believe are what these signs represent. Number 3, a strange beast like a buffalo with great long horns will overrun the land in large numbers. Number 4, the land will be crossed by snakes of iron. Number 5, the land will be crisscrossed by a giant spider web. Number 6, the land will be crisscrossed with rivers of stone that make pictures in the sun. Number 7, you will hear of the sea turning black and many living things dying because of it. Number 8, you will see many youth who will wear their hair long like my people. They will come and join the tribal nations and learn their ways and wisdom. Number 9, this is the final sign. You will hear of a dwelling place in the heavens above the earth that shall fall with a great crash. It will appear as a blue star. Very soon after this, the ceremonies of my people will cease. Anyways, whether that prophecy is legit or not, all of these things came across my path in 24 hours. And so I feel like there's something to this. There's something to really pay attention to in the next couple of years. So many signs that are happening in the heavens that are reminding us to look upwards and pay attention. And I believe this next year, 2020, is pivotal. I believe it's the year of the Lord's perfect vision, 2020 perfect vision, and it's going to lead us into what's next, to what the Lord has in store. And as I've said in the last few video messages, because of all of this, there is that great deception that's taking place right now, where even the very elect are being deceived. This deception is spreading throughout all of Christianity, all over the world. In fact, I came across a video this week of some people who were exposing wolves in sheep's clothing in their church. And these were some big name people, whether they refer to themselves as a televangelist or just a Bible teacher. The one thing they have in common is they are millionaires and they've made all of that money from teaching the gospel, or their version of the gospel. And some of these people worked for these leaders and said, you know, it took some time, but finally that day came when I realized that this was a wolf in sheep's clothing. And when I realized that, when my eyes were opened, I couldn't be a part of that anymore. I had to leave. As these people were having this conversation about their similar experiences with other wolves in sheep's clothing throughout Christianity, the one thing that they all were talking about was that in these groups, whether they're just large organizations or mega churches, but a lot of things that they have in common is the worshiping of spiritual gifts and signs, just extremely charismatic. A lot of them come out of that Toronto blessing movement that I talked about a few videos back, and their services and meetings are heavily filled with speaking in tongues and rolling on the floor, falling to the ground, you know, all of that type of stuff. And they believe and they teach that if your church isn't doing these things, you don't really have the Holy Spirit. And so these people who've had their eyes opened and have left that behind are finding more conservative churches who aren't doing those things, who are sticking to scripture and doctrine and hymns instead of worship bands. And they're saying that they are feeling the Spirit in their services, that their services are more reverent and peaceful and a place where they believe the Spirit is truly cultivated. But they point out how these other churches and groups and organizations are saying, no, if your services are quiet and reverent, the spirit really isn't there, because when the spirit's there, it gets loud, it gets noisy, body moves, you lose control, anything can happen. It's definitely entertaining to watch, it's not boring. And so they were just talking about the differences, and it just reminded me of that video that I shared a few videos back. So it was interesting to see these other Christians who are sort of waking up and having these eye-opening experiences and choosing to walk away and leave that world behind, to leave all of that behind. So not only do we see people walking away from the New Age movement, but we see people walking away from false teachers and leaders and groups and organizations. There's even a movement called the Walk Away Movement of people who are leaving the Democratic Party and just walking away. So we're seeing this happen almost at every level. It's definitely something to pay attention to. Now, around this time, someone reached out to me and shared with me a Glenn Beck video where he talks about what's coming to America. It's a recent video that he did. I have a link to that down below, but he talks about the deep state and how all of this is working together on the deep state level and what the plans are. And he talks about things he's never shared before. And as I was watching his video, this image came up on the screen and it completely caught my attention, because that week I had been seeing this animal everywhere. And I don't know what's plural for octopus. Is that octopuses? Octi? I don't know. Anyways, I've been seeing these everywhere, and I even thought, I wonder why I keep seeing these. I wonder why everywhere I go there's an octopus. And I wondered if there was something to that. Then I saw that image on his screen, and there it was again. It's just another reminder, another witness of what the adversary is doing and what his plan is to try and gain control over the world to prevent the Lord from fulfilling his plans, which of course we all know how that's going to end. But we definitely can see that happening right now. Okay, so now I'm going to show you some screenshots that I have taken in the last couple of weeks that really stood out to me. So this first one that I have up here on the screen, this was on November 11th, so 1111. This is an order that came through my website on November 11th at 9:11 a.m. So there's a few numbers I always see, and for me they have meaning. I feel like they just pop up in my life. They're kind of my pay attention numbers, and I never go out looking for them, but when they're there, I notice them. And so this first one is an order that came through my website on November 11th, 11/11 at 9:11 a.m. So 911, emergency, urgency. Then in the address, there again is 111. Then in the price and subtotal, there it is again, 911. And so then I'm thinking, okay, pay attention, pay attention. Well, today is November 11th, 111. 111 to me always represents unity, becoming one with the Lord, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, becoming one with the Godhead. It reminds me of the first and second great commandment, which is urgent right now. It's urgent in this 11th hour that we're in. So I look up at my screen and I have YouTube up, and there's my most recent video, video 128, and it has 11 likes on November 11th. So I'm starting to see this. Pay attention. It's the 11th hour. Pay attention. Pay attention. Then I go onto Facebook, and the very first post I see is this. And it was in our 11th hour group. Ever wonder why Veterans Day is on the 11th and does not change? Again, it was a pay attention day. It was Veterans Day, and flags were everywhere. World War I ended on the 11th month of the 11th day on the 11th hour. Now, I've shared this before in a past video, but this was a reminder I needed to hear. Today, I saw a man selling poppies stop a lady and ask if he could reposition her poppy. While doing so, he told the lady she should wear the poppy on the right side. The red represents the blood of all those who gave their lives. The black represents the mourning of those who didn't have their loved ones return home. And the green leaf represents the grass and the crops growing and future prosperity after the war destroyed so much. The leaf should be positioned at 11 o'clock to represent the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, the time that World War I formally ended. He was worried that younger generations wouldn't understand this, and his generation wouldn't be around for much longer to teach them. We must must remember those from our current wars too. For those that do not know, the 11th day of the 11th month is Veterans Day. So there was that post again reminding me, what hour are we in? We are in the 11th hour, in the final minute until midnight when the bridegroom comes. So then a couple days later, my sister sends me a text. I look down at my phone and I see that it's 3:11. Right when I get this text, it's 3:11, and then I realize I got it on November 13th. So there again is the 113, the 311, which again is a reminder of the third day power in this 11th hour. In this final hour, we need to be using that power. We need to use what it is we've been endowed with. And President Nelson talked all about that in Women's Conference back in October, and I talked about that in my last video message. So there again is my pay attention number. Pay attention to the things that are happening in this 11th hour right now. These are the things that are trying to destroy what God is doing. These are the things that are trying to destroy His kingdom. These are the things that we need to be rising up against and doing so with God's power. And here it is. Why gender ideology is a horrifying religion. Again, to me, this was a pay attention topic. This is something we need to be paying attention to. These are all the things that the adversary is pulling out right now to create a lot of confusion, a lot of division, and to remove black and white and create a whole bunch of gray. And remember, with God, there is no gray. It's either black or it's white. You're either on the right hand or the left hand. There is no middle ground. But the adversary will tell you the opposite. He'll tell you that there is a lot of gray, and sometimes the safest place is to be in the middle, in the gray. Well, then my friend Karen reaches out to me and she texts me and she says, I'm listening to President Nelson's autobiography, and in there he mentions that his wife Wendy was the 113th person to join their family. And then of course here's a screenshot. In that moment she looks down and there she sees all the 113s. She sent that to me and of course it made me smile. So for me, 311 is a reminder of the Lord's third day power in this 11th hour. And when I see it backwards, 113, it reminds me of pointing backwards through the family, through your family tree. It reminds me of that work that we're doing right now, that gathering of Israel on both sides of the veil. So when I see 113, I think of family, and I've shared that a lot in my videos. It's a number I see often when I'm doing family history work. And so when she brought that up, that Wendy Nelson became the 113th member of their family, of course, that made us both smile. Now, right around this time, someone shared a post, and I look up at my screen and I see 666 and the word awful situation. And it was just a reminder that yes, with everything going on right now, as I've said, it looks like we really do have an awful situation going on. When you look at everything that's happening right now in the headlines, it doesn't look good. And we can see who is the author of all of that chaos. It's Satan, it's the adversary. But again, in this 11th hour, we can't put our focus on him and what he's doing. We need to put our focus on building up the Lord's kingdom and the gathering of Israel that we all play a role in. Okay, another screenshot here. A friend sent this to me and she said, I was reading in Doctrine and Covenants and all of a sudden it reminded me of your video when you talked about those wolves in sheep's clothing who are women who are leading others to believe that they are Jesus, or that Jesus speaks through them, that they channel him. And it says, and again, verily I say unto you that the Son of Man cometh not in the form of a woman, neither of a man traveling on the earth. Wherefore be not deceived, but continue in steadfastness, looking forth for the heavens to be shaken, and the earth to tremble and to reel to and fro as a drunken man, and for the valleys to be exalted, and for the mountains to be made low, and for the rough places to become smooth, and all this when the angel shall sound his trumpet. So another reminder, be not deceived, because it is happening right now. This deception has no boundaries and no limits. And that's all I've talked about in my last few videos, is how rampant it is right now. And so many of the elect are leaving the covenant path to follow these other people who say that they are with Jesus, they know Jesus, he speaks through them, or they are Jesus. But in essence, they're saying, if you want to know Jesus, come follow me. Come follow my group and my organization because we know Jesus. We have Jesus, or we are Jesus. And as crazy as that sounds, there are so many who are falling for it and believing it. And I have seen that with my own eyes, which is why I continue to sound this alarm. All right, so now I'm going to share some screenshots of some examples of this deception that is just from the last couple of days. So the other day I was on Facebook and all of a sudden this post popped up in my feed from a group that I forgot that I was a part of. So I realized here's another group I need to delete myself from. This is a group that someone had added me to either earlier this year or last year, but it was a group I never spent any time in. So as I go in to delete myself, suddenly I get this feeling, wait, don't delete yourself yet. First go in and share your testimony of what it is you've learned. Then when they delete your post, that's when you can delete yourself from this group. So I thought, okay, all right, I'll do that. I never felt prompted to do that with any of the other groups that I deleted myself from. But for this one, I did. So now this group is all about meditation, and these are Latter-day Saint people, currently or used to be Latter-day Saints, who are really into meditation and yoga. And so a lot of them will share their meditation experiences. So I thought, okay, well, I can play it safe. So I wrote, hi, I just wanted to share with everyone my own meditation experience and how it changed my life. And I had a link to my video where I talk about my Kundalini yoga experience and how crazy that was and how my eyes have since been opened to what that really is and the darkness behind it. So I posted that, and shortly after that, one of the admins friended me on Facebook, and then as time went by, there were no likes, and I thought either no one's reading it or people are watching the video and not liking what it is I'm sharing. But I knew it must be for someone, whether it was just to plant a seed and to get that stirring in someone's mind, or it was an answer to someone's prayer that day. Well, eventually later, someone did reach out to me and thank me for posting that video. So I noticed that the people who were liking the video weren't commenting on that page. It's almost as though they were afraid to like it or support it or comment about it. So they were writing me privately and telling me, thank you for this video. Thank you for sharing this experience. I had no idea. This was a wake-up call for me. Well, 3 days later, the admin, the owner of that group, who the group is named after, he reached out to me and he said, you know what? I don't know what your intentions were with sharing this video, but it's very much the opposite of what it is we're trying to do in this group. We are for meditation, we support it, and yoga and all of that. Sounds like you had a crazy experience, but that's unfortunate for you. But he says what you share is the opposite of how we feel and what we believe. So I've gone ahead and deleted your post. So I wrote him back and I said, that's okay. I figured it would get deleted, but it served its purpose. I felt prompted to share it. The people who were supposed to see it have seen it. And the people who it was supposed to reach have been reached and have been blessed by it. So right after he deleted it, I went and removed myself from the group. But before I did that, I was scrolling through the posts, and it was interesting. I took some screenshots. And it's funny because in the About section of that Facebook group, it says, we are a group of Mormons and ex-Mormons who are seriously pursuing the inner path of spiritual rebirth through the practices of meditation and contemplative prayer. We share the joys and difficulties of this path, honoring each person's perspective and experience. Well, I want to say it kind of reminds me of the Democratic Party. We are tolerant, we are honoring everyone's perspectives and experiences, unless those perspectives and experiences differ from our own. It reminded me of that, which is why my post got deleted. So the top post of this group was explaining how the owner of the Facebook page was stepping down. He was taking some time to reevaluate his priorities and his personal life, and was stepping down and handing over the Facebook group to someone else. And so this other person who was taking over the Facebook group was explaining the change. As I scrolled down and read a lot of his posts, it was really interesting to see what was happening as he shared his beliefs and his philosophies, what that was doing to the followers of the group and the conversations that they were having. So I took some screenshots of that because it illustrates exactly what I've been talking about in my last few video messages and my blog post. So these are probably out of order, but he says right here, as I mentioned in my last post, I think that taking the chance to reintroduce ourselves and share our current meditation practices and objectives would be a good thing as we start this new phase of this Facebook group. So he goes on to share his story of how he got involved in this world. He talks about Kriya Yoga and how he felt the spirit, and because of that, he increased his daily meditation practice. He was given a book to study, and then he was initiated into Kriya Yoga. He said, initiation into an Eastern spiritual pathway is not joining a new church. It is only a traditional formal transmission of knowledge, usually with no specific commitment. So I just want to point out, these are the same things, these are the same red flags that I heard in all of these other groups and organizations that I talked about in my last video messages. The group that I talked about where the woman was killed, where her life was taken, that group in particular would often say, we are not a church. If you join our organization, it doesn't mean you have to leave whatever church you belong to because we are not a church. However, I came to find out after doing my own research in the last month that that group did start a church. They founded a church in Idaho and it only lasted a few years because there were hardly any members. And I think they realized when they were a church, there wasn't a lot of interest. But when they were safer, when they were just an organization, then people were interested. So they decided to no longer officially be a church. That's something I hear a lot is, no, we're not a church. It might feel that way because we're doing a lot of things connected to Hindu worship and these other religions. We're incorporating their worship into our practices. So it feels like it's a church, like it's a religion, but it's not. So he shares his story and he says how he attended a retreat which involved spiritual awareness. That's another red flag term that you hear a lot in these groups, is increasing your spiritual awareness. He mentions how he's an open-minded Mormon. That's the thing too, is in these groups, they'll say the only way to progress spiritually is you have to have an open mind. You have to be open to all these things that would normally scare you off or frighten you or alarm you, startle you because they're different, but that's okay. It's okay. You just need to have an open mind, and without that open mind, you're never gonna grow. You're never gonna progress spiritually. That's another red flag. It's one thing to be open to the Spirit and to be open to the teachings of the Word of God. And it's another thing to be open to just everything that the world wants to throw our way. To be open to every carrot that Satan dangles in front of us. Thinking, you know what, I've got my gift of discernment, so I'm good. That's how he gets us every time, is he tells us, you don't have an open mind. If you want to really progress and grow spiritually, you need to open up to all these other things and experiment with them, learn about them, or you're never gonna grow. So he talks about this person that he meets, who's the person who started this group, and how he started to learn about his philosophy and was interested in continuing down the pathway that this man has set up. So isn't that interesting? He refers to it as this man's pathway. It's not the Lord's path. It's not the covenant path. It is a path, but it's this man's path. And of course I blacked out his name, but he says he set up a path. He started teaching his philosophies. Red flags right there. Okay, so then here's another post. He says, great discussion. I've opened the group to active, inactive, and ex-members because there are many different ways for folks to redefine their relationship with the church as they move through faith transitions and inner awakening. Red flag, red flag, red flag. Church can be extremely frustrating for me, and it is hard to sit on my hands when false doctrine is taught. So he's opening up this conversation. I'm going to show you more in a minute of where people join in, of saying, you know what, it can be frustrating going to church because false doctrine is often taught, and it's frustrating to listen to that, especially as you're going through an inner awakening and you're awakening to spiritual truth and you're progressing. You're rising above everyone around you. I really enjoy sacrament meetings since I love my neighbors, but he says, I have my special sacrament meditation that I do, and I often use the meeting to do sushumna breathing, which is always beneficial for me. Now, I talked about these breathing techniques, shared experiences of former Hindus who used to do these breathing meditations and the Kriya Yoga, and how it opened them up to attacks from the demonic. And so here he is saying that he's doing this in sacrament meeting, in the chapel. He goes on to talk about that now he loves Sunday school since he's teaching it. So he used to not love Sunday school. He didn't like what was being taught, but now that he's the teacher, he likes it. He says the discussions are usually mind-numbing and sometimes disturbing, but once in a while, a few gems pop up. He says, but with this worship of leaders and mindless obedience to childish teachings, this hurts my head and my heart. So he's talking about his annoyance with the members of the church blindly following and blindly obeying the leaders of the church. He says, I stopped going for a period of time, but have returned since I like the new elders quorum president and I want to support him. I always have a book to read on my iPad, so I feel like I'm doing something beneficial as I remain in contact with quorum members. So when he's there and he doesn't like what's being taught and discussed, he'll tune it all out and read a book on his iPad, probably about meditation. So then people begin to comment from there, and someone says, I don't attend an LDS church at this time, and that helps a lot with my frustration. Someone else says, I've been a member since I was 17, attended for the past few years with variable levels of comfort, neutrality, and frustration. Only recently has the frustration become something else, almost to the point where it now feels lacking in purposeful value or meaning for me. So I really want to carefully examine what is happening. And the conversation just continues of all these people saying how frustrated they are with church and with following the leaders of the church and listening to the doctrines that are being taught, and how it's boring, it's mind-numbing, it's milk, and they just want the meat. And they just feel like with this path that they're on, following this man and his path and his philosophies, they're learning so much more, that they're expanding above and beyond all of the people in their ward. And this is exactly what I talked about in my last few videos. You feel like you become better than everyone around you. You know more than they do. You're on a higher level, a higher path. You've become awakened. They're all asleep. And you begin to separate yourselves from them and isolate yourselves from them and not want to be around them. Whose plan is that? That is not the plan of the Lord. That is not what we're to be doing. That's not a part of the gathering. When we step away and hide and isolate ourselves and remove ourselves from the body of Christ, that is the plan of the adversary. Someone else commented, I find myself in this state of fear and anxiety more often than not. Remember how I talked about, with all the experiences that I shared, that yoga actually introduces anxiety and depression. It opens you up to attacks from the demonic. And I shared example after example after example from several different people and their experiences. For me, it's easy to see, but has been difficult to do. I recognize my chest tightening and my shoulders and jaw become tense. It's as if my mind gets hyper-focused on the outcome I don't want to have happen. I understand that desire and fear are controlling me, yet I struggle to let go of it all. I'm really excited to learn how to learn better, to truly surrender everything external to my consciousness. So rather than surrendering everything to the Savior and using the atonement, lifting our burdens, our anxiety, our depression, everything that's weighing us down, instead of surrendering that to Him, with these teachings, we're surrendering it to ourselves. We're surrendering it to our consciousness. I'll keep practicing. Thanks for the reminder. Another person says, I don't see many posts here about frustrations with personal experiences on Sundays in church. Is that because you have evolved beyond the hook of being upset? Don't go anymore, though I know some of you have callings and you teach, or just voice it somewhere else. I want to be very respectful of the tone and content of this group, and I'm aware I'm still confused and hurting and honestly a bit dismayed at times. So here's the pattern that I've talked about in my videos. You see this pattern of confusion and hurt and frustration. Who is the author of pain, suffering, and confusion? That is the adversary. Red flag, red flag, red flag. When you pursue a path and you start to feel confused and hurt and angry and upset and you start to experience anxiety and depression, that is not of the Lord. Someone says, it's important to many that the content of this group be ways that mystic practices can help frustrations. So no, the discussions are not to be about how the Savior can help us with our frustrations. The discussions of this group are to be about how mystic practices help us with our frustrations. I reserve my deepest ones for private discussions. Feel free to PM me if you need an understanding person to discuss with. I'm always looking for ways to work through my own Sunday challenges. But for making griping a mantra, there is no lack of that on the net. Wink. Oh my goodness. Okay, so then the new admin of the group shared this picture, and it's a picture of his bookshelf. And as you look, you see in the very back of the bookshelf is a picture of Joseph Smith and Jesus Christ, and they're framed. So those pictures are pushed to the back of the bookshelf, and in the front, you see these Hindu leaders, these other gods. And you see a picture of Jesus in line with these pictures of these other teachers, and these are the great masters. And Jesus is viewed as an ascended master who came here to earth to teach us how to ascend just like he did. That's what many of these groups believe. And down below, he displays all of the books he is reading. India, Mirror of Truth, The Holy Science, The Perennial Philosophy, The Yoga of Jesus, The 7 Lessons in Conscious Living. These are the books that he's reading. This is where he's getting his teachings and philosophies from. And then below that, you see all the books that he's reading and studying that all have to do with all of this, with that whole world, and with Hinduism and India and all of these other religious practices. That's what's on his bookshelf. And he's making a point. He's sharing a picture of his bookshelf to show where his heart truly is, where his priorities are, who it is he truly worships. It's symbolic of, these are just spiritual teachers. These are spiritual masters. Christ was a spiritual teacher. He was a master. We are trying to be like him. We are trying to be an ascended master, just like Christ was, which is that whole New Age philosophy that he is not the Son of God. Anyways, I just keep coming across this all the time. Everywhere I look lately, I see these philosophies and these teachings all over the place. It is just so prevalent right now. And all of these people are being pulled away. They're being pulled off the covenant path down these other paths that are actually leading away from the Savior. They're looking for salvation through mystic practices and rituals, not through the atonement of Jesus Christ. So we're seeing this happen not only in our church with our members, but all over the world, throughout all of Christianity. This is what the adversary is doing right now, and I believe this to be a part of that great deception that is pulling away even the very elect. And I've had so many more stories pouring in, so many more messages coming in over the last week of people telling me, I found your video, I listened to it, it came at just the right time. I was going down this path, I was having doubts about it, I prayed, and I found your video. Thank you. So again, I say, if you have gone down this path and you have turned around and come back, use your own experiences as a witness and a testimony to help bring others back to the Lord. Another thing that I keep seeing lately is people asking for donations. I've seen some of these groups and podcasts that I used to follow start asking for money and donations from all their followers and subscribers. To me, that's always been a red flag. If someone I'm listening to or someone I'm following is asking for money so that they can continue sharing spiritual messages and testifying of gospel truths, for me, that's something that I've noticed as a pattern with all of these groups. Maybe not at first, but later on down the road, they get to a point where they start asking for money and donations and saying, what I do is hard work, it's a lot of work. I need to be able to support my family. I need to be able to pay my bills. And you start to feel guilty that you need to support, you need to give them money so that they can continue testifying of gospel truths and sharing spiritual messages and taking care of their family. And the way that I've always looked at it is we are asked to sacrifice for the kingdom of God. It is something we covenant to do, to sacrifice. When I make these videos, it's a sacrifice. I'm giving up time. I could be doing so many other things, but I never ask my subscribers for money in return. I never ask for donations or share a story of why I need money or any of that. And that's because I don't look at sharing messages and bearing witness of truths as a source of income. This is something I do in my spare time. And even though I don't have a lot of spare time, it's something that I feel is important. And it's something that I'm willing to sacrifice to do, whether it's blog post articles or video messages. It's something that I just feel good about doing and I don't expect anything in return. So I've been seeing a lot of that lately and I just wanted to put that out there as a red flag. And with one particular group that was asking for donations, they also charge money to make appointments with them so that they can teach you the following. They've put on their website, we teach you how to find true, lasting happiness and joy by creating a direct link to God. What your divine potential and destiny is. How to find true, lasting happiness and joy by creating a direct link to God. And how to understand your relationship to Christ and unlock your true potential. Okay, based on all my experiences from my past, these are all red flags. And they do mention on their website that all of this information and knowledge is free because it's in the scriptures, it's on LDS.org, it comes from the prophets, the apostles. They teach us how to have a relationship with our Savior. The gospel teaches us how to find true and lasting happiness and joy. And the scriptures teach us how to have a relationship with Jesus Christ. If we want to learn all of this, we can be reading our scriptures and attending church and listening to the conference talks from our leaders, apostles, prophets. We don't need to be paying someone money to be shown how to do all the things that have already been laid out for us. The blueprint is already there and it's so simple. So whenever I see people charging money to teach these basic simple truths, these basic gospel truths, I always get this sinking feeling in my stomach. Part of sharing the gospel, part of this gathering on both sides of the veil, part of this work that we're doing to gather in Israel requires sacrifice. It's us just going out and bearing our testimony to others, not expecting anything in return for our time. If we truly want to help people find the path to Jesus Christ, then just out of the goodness of our hearts, we share that with them. We don't profit from it. We don't make money from it. We don't set up appointments and have people pay us large amounts of money for our time. Whenever I hear that or I see that, I just get this sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. And I've been seeing a lot of that lately in that whole world of equal energy exchange and mentoring, life coaches, spiritual coaching, all of that. It just makes me cringe, you guys. And so I just wanted to point those out as additional red flags. In fact, I remember a time several years ago when people would ask me if I would be their mentor. And I didn't understand what that meant. I didn't know how to be someone's mentor. I didn't know what that entailed. And I remember my husband telling me, if it's going to take a lot of your time, if people want to meet with you so that you can share tips with them and a blueprint for how to reach their goals, you're going to need to charge money for that. That's something you're not going to do for free, or people are going to take advantage of you. And so I remember for a little bit, I tried this out. I tried doing mentoring appointments only with people who were asking me to do this. And just after 1 or 2 appointments, I decided, you know what, this isn't what I want to be doing. I really don't feel good about this. And so I stopped. But you know, I can see how people can get so wrapped up in this world, especially when they're mentoring on principles and teachings from the gospel, because it is so simple and it is so easy. It's something they're familiar with. So they feel better about earning an income by sharing things that they're familiar with, and it very quickly becomes a dangerous path. Okay, now I'm going to share some experiences from my past. So the other day as I was cleaning, some of these experiences from my past came to mind, and I realized I've never shared some of these in any of my videos. And I just feel that they might be helpful for someone out there because they illustrate what I've been talking about in my last few videos. So the first one is the earliest memory I have. It's the earliest experience or encounter I had with that world. I was just getting into my bachelor's degree. So my major was split into 3. It was social work, family studies, and communication. And so there was this program being advertised, this mentoring program, where they would line you up with a mentor, with a professional who's already in that industry, and they'll take you to lunch and ask you questions. You can ask them questions, and just kind of, you know, it was supposed to give you a feel for the field that you were wanting to go into. So I remember I filled out an application for this, and I got a phone call telling me that I had a lunch appointment set up with someone in the field of social work. And these were all people from the community working in different professions. And so I didn't know who my mentor was. It was going to be a surprise. So I met at the restaurant, and I remember I got out of my car and I see this redheaded woman wearing clothes like from India. You know, she had on this bright, colorful, silky clothing, and she had glasses and curly red hair, and she chose to eat at this Asian restaurant. So we go into this restaurant and we sit down, and it was an Asian buffet, and we get talking, and she tells me that she works at this healing center in Ogden. And I remember she called it the Chrysalis Healing Center, something like that. And that's always stuck in my mind. And I mean, this was over 20 years ago. And she started to tell me at first, you know, it's a healing center and I started it, and we just help people who have had a hard life. They come in and find healing, and we have different programs and services. And as we got talking, I think she saw how open of a person that I am, and she felt comfortable talking to me, and suddenly she started telling me, she said, okay, well, what I want to tell you next, I want to tell you how I got started into this business. And I said, okay. And she said, it all started one day when I was visited by beings from another planet. And right when she said that, my heart sunk. Like, I just remember I got that sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, and I lost my appetite, and I thought, oh, there goes my mentoring opportunity right out the door. Like, this is not going where I wanted it to go. And she just starts telling me about these beings that came in her backyard one day while she was meditating, and they appeared to her from another planet, and they had names, and she said the name of their planet they were from, and they spoke another language, and they communicated telepathically with her, and they were glowing, and they told her she needed to start this healing center, and they would teach her the ways of healing. And I just remember tuning it all out. It went in one ear and out the other, and I was just thinking, where's the exit? How can I get out of here? I was not wanting to hear any of that, and I was already getting a strange vibe from this woman the minute she introduced herself to me. It was just an off feeling. And so when she started telling me all that, I thought, oh goodness. And I just sat there with a smile, because that's what I do. And I remember she said, are you interested in learning more? Do you want to come do a meditation? I can show you. And I thought, oh, please no. So I got out of that quickly. I went back to the university and I complained about my experience, and they felt really bad. And so they removed her from the mentoring program. And then I got to go out and mentor with somebody else and have a decent, good experience. Anyways, I had forgotten all about that, but I just realized that was my first encounter. That was the first time the adversary tried to pull me off the path. It was way back then. And I thought about how easy it is for people like that to target college students. to target young people who are pursuing the path of knowledge, you know, who are pursuing a degree. And so they're open, they're learning, how vulnerable they are to just hear about anything and accept that. So anyways, I was thinking about that, and that was my first encounter with that world. Now as I look back at that, I think about all these other people I've since come in contact with over the years who started healing centers, healing practices, certification programs where they teach a modality or a way of healing, and it was a way that was revealed to them through another being, through an angel, through a dream, through a vision, whatever it may be. Somebody came to them and taught them a new way of healing, some kind of new technology, and told them that they were the ones to do this and lead the way and teach and help others. And that's the pattern that I've been seeing that connects all of these groups together, is engaging in some form of meditation, opening up their chakras, and then soon after that being visited by other beings or channeling them and having these supernatural encounters and experiences and being told that they are the ones to lead this new path, to lead this new way and teach this knowledge and whatever it may be. And I just see it happening all around. So as I was reflecting on all of these past experiences and years ago when I used to really be involved in that world, and as I said before, it was fellow Latter-day Saint women who invited me in and made it seem so safe and comfortable and wonderful. And I remember another red flag that I don't think I mentioned before, so I want to bring that up now. As I was looking back, I remember I would be annoyed by people who would only reference conference talks and quotes from apostles and prophets or anything just scripture. I was more open to and happy about people that quoted other leaders from other churches and other religions and world leaders and whatever it may be, right? Other spiritual people outside of the church. I was more interested in that. I was more open to that and more excited about that. And whenever I saw people post on Facebook or I went to a class or a workshop and it was just straight to the scriptures and prophet quote and conference talks, I would tune it out and I would feel like, oh, this is just so boring. This is just milk. I want the meat. And it would always annoy me. And that makes me feel so sad when I think about that I was at one time in a place where I felt that way. So to me, that's a huge red flag when you start to feel like I only want stuff outside of the church. I want to read about and hear about all these other people and their groups and organizations and their churches and their religions and their experiences that they're having, because it's so much more exciting and it's so different than what I have. And it's more interesting, and you turn your focus there, and that's all you want and seek after. That is a big red flag. Where now, over the last couple years, especially the last few months, I've done a complete 180, and I seek after and I hunger for just the scriptures, just the pure word of God, just the talks and the quotes from the prophets and the apostles and the leaders of the church. That brings me the most comfort, the most excitement. That really satisfies my soul more than ever before. And it's because I no longer have those deceptive spirits influencing me. That's how you know. That's how you know when you're being deceived, when you feel annoyed by or angry at people who stick to scripture and conference talks and the pure and simple gospel. Okay, another experience that I want to share with you was I shared a little bit about this at a conference several years ago. I think I also shared it in an old video, but I shared an experience and what I didn't mention previously when I've shared this is that this was the beginning of that path for me. This was when I first got introduced to that world and I was serious about it. This was my first invitation to a series of workshops that introduced me to all of this knowledge taught by a Latter-day Saint friend. And I remember coming home from her workshops late at night, and I would turn on talk radio and Coast to Coast AM would be on, and it was pretty late at night. And I remember I shared how I was listening to the radio and I heard this story. They were talking about if you ever get the phone number show up on your phone that's all zeros, so 9 zeros. It's a call from the other side of the veil. And all these people were calling in and sharing their experiences of how when they first would answer the call, there would be no one there. So they thought it was a telemarketer or just some kind of telephone error, so they would hang up. But if they waited long enough, there was always a voice that would eventually come on and deliver some message. And the people that called in that night, it was just story after story after story of how every time they get that number, it's someone from the other side of the veil. And I remember thinking, well, that's interesting. I've never had an all zero number call before. Don't know that I ever will. And then not too long after that, and I remember I left this part out of my story on purpose because I felt that if I shared what it was I was really doing, it would take away the credibility of my experience and my story, and I didn't want people to judge me, so I left this part out. But now I'm going to share it with you because now it all makes sense. So I would just tell it that, you know, there was a day when I was spending time with the Lord and I had this experience. But what I failed to say before was what it was I was doing, how I was spending time with the Lord. You see, I was learning about chakras at these workshops, and I was so fascinated by them and curious, and I wanted to open my chakras, and I wanted to learn how to do that. It was also new to me, and I wanted to be taught by someone who was LDS, who had my same beliefs. So I went online and I Googled Latter-day Saint opening chakras, and a series of videos popped up by Carol Tuttle. And that was when I first learned who she was. She had the 7 different videos of how to open and balance each chakra, and so I went through each video. I spent an entire afternoon going through each of her videos and opening every single one of my chakras. I remember when I got to the last video, which was the 7th chakra, she shared in there at the end, she said, "Now, I just want to let you know, when I first did this and I first opened all of my chakras, a special experience happened to me, and I hope it happens to you too, but I felt hands placed on my head and it got really warm, and I just felt this wave of energy go through me, and I felt like I had become closer to the Lord, and so I hope that happens to you." And I remember thinking, wow, that would be so neat if that happened to me. And I'd heard all these other experiences of the veil opening. When people open up all their chakras, they have this awakening and the veil opens up and they have these supernatural experiences, and I so much wanted that. And so I remember right as I did it, I completed the video. Right when the video ended of opening my last chakra, all of a sudden I feel this warmth placed on my head, just like she said, just like hands on my head. And all of a sudden, and this is the part I jumped to in my experience, I just said, you know, I was spending time with the Lord, and then all of a sudden this amazing thing happened, and I felt hands placed on my head, and I felt warm rushing up and down throughout my body, and it felt like just this energy wave just shooting up and down like an elevator, and I was so happy. And then right in that moment, right when I felt the hands placed on my head, right when that video ended, but I never mentioned the video in my past experiences when I've shared this, but right when that video ended, my phone rang, and I looked down and it's all zeros, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, it's the Lord. It's somebody calling me from the other side of the veil, because I just got myself aligned and in tune with the universe, and I've opened up all my portals, and I'm now in tune to receiving messages and having through the veil experiences. Oh my goodness, someone's calling me. It's my first all zero number ever. I remember at the time thinking that the Lord had set all of this up, and I was on this path, and he was letting me know that I was on this right path and I was doing the right thing, and it felt so good and warm and happy. But you see, the further I went down that path, the further away I got from the truth. And I started feeding into this deception because it felt good. It was disguised as good and warm. And I remember I picked up the phone and I did what they told me to. There was nobody there, so I waited and I waited and I waited, and all of a sudden I hear this static and this crackling sound, and a woman's voice comes through. And I can't hear what she's saying with my physical ears, but inside I felt all this emotion. I felt all of this heat and energy just jumping up and down, and I had no idea what she was saying, but I interpreted that when I shared this experience. I said, you know what, it was a woman's voice, and my spirit recognized her even though I didn't know who she was, and my spirit was jumping up and down for joy, and my spirit understood what it was she was saying even though I didn't, and she downloaded me with all of this knowledge and love, and And I remember one of my spiritual friends at the time who I was paying money to meet with, lots of money. Again, all these red flags, right? I went to her and I shared this experience with her, and she did her muscle testing and she said, oh, it was Heavenly Mother. That was an encounter with Heavenly Mother, and she was letting you know how much she loves you, and your spirit recognized her. You knew that was her, and she's so proud of you that you're on this path, and all these wonderful things are in store for you. You have this incredible mission. You're this seraphim angel. You used to, surround the throne of God, and you're too good to be here. You really don't even need to be here. You don't even need to have a body. You're just here to help other people. You're a teacher. And I heard her tell so many other people that same thing. Oh my goodness, you guys. And anyways, I remember thinking, wow. And it's just like the adversary just fed that seed. He planted that seed and he fed it and he fed it. And it was like this addiction. It was like the beginning of this addiction. Wow, my first time opening my chakras, and I get a phone call from heaven, and it's my Heavenly Mother, and she's downloading me with all of this power and information and love, and I'm on this incredible path, and I'm this seraphim angel who doesn't even need to be here. I'm just here to teach other people. Oh my goodness, you guys. And I remember it was this addiction. Like, I just wanted more of that. It was never enough. I wanted more supernatural encounters, more supernatural experiences, just more. And if ever a week went by and things like that didn't happen, I felt like, oh, there's something wrong with me. What am I doing wrong? They're disappointed in me. The heavens are closed. I've done something wrong. And it was just this constant seeking of more and more. It was never enough. It was this addiction. And I see this happening right now with so many other people. That's why I feel like I need to share this. So I remember after the phone call ended, I was so excited when this being got off the phone with me. I was jumping up and down off the furniture. It was this high. I called it a spiritual high. And people were telling me, oh, that was the Holy Spirit. That's what the Holy Spirit really feels like. Like when you really have the Holy Spirit in you, moving upon you, you're rolling on the floor, you're shaking, you're jumping up and down, you're falling, you're fainting, you're passing out, you're not acting like yourself, you're not in control. Woo, red flag. And the devil disguises it as a good feeling. It felt good, it felt amazing. I felt like I was on top of the world, and I just wanted to share with the whole world what had just happened to me, but I felt like I couldn't because no one would understand. So then you see right here is the beginning of my isolation. I'm having all these supernatural experiences, but I feel like I can't share them with anyone because they'll judge me and they won't understand, and I'm casting my pearls before swine, right? And then you start kind of elevating yourself. Well, I'm having these experiences, so I'm on this path, I'm doing something right, and these other people are not, and they're going to judge me and tell me I'm doing something wrong. And you can see how you start to isolate yourself and separate yourself from the people who love you most and the people that you should be serving and loving as well. And so major red flags, you guys. Now, something I want to point out after the fact, as I've looked back and reflected upon this, I truly believe that any message from our Father in heaven, any message from heaven, period, is going to have clarity. It's going to be clear. It's not going to be muffled and distorted and filled with static and hard to understand, hard to hear. It's going to be very, very clear. No confusion at all. So that right there should have been my biggest sign that that was not from the Lord. It was this distant, faint voice, and there was all this static, and it was muffled, and I couldn't hear the voice. I don't believe that that's how the Lord speaks to us. I believe it comes through a very clear channel of communication. We have a very clear understanding of what we're being told, what we're being taught. And this was something else. So anyways, that's an experience that I never fully shared in its entirety, and so I felt like I needed to do that. And I think I may have shared after that I had a few other instances after that where I had all zeros call me, and then I shared this with my sister, and she had all zeros call her. And then when I was speaking about this at my very first and last energy healing conference that I spoke at, I was invited to speak at years ago. And then I decided not to do that anymore. But I remember in there I was sharing this experience, and during that presentation, a woman got an all-zero phone call and believed it to be from her mother who had just died of cancer, and we had that on the recording. And I just was thinking, oh, how blessed are we that this is happening live during this conference as it's being recorded. This is so awesome. It's another big witness of what I'm talking about. But I just feel, again, that was the adversary's clever way of deceiving the people. Anyways, around this time, another experience I just wanted to share real quick. Around this time, there was a woman, I'm not going to say her name, but she has since been excommunicated from the church. And this was when she was first up and coming. She had released some books. She's big into energy healing, and so she was asked to be the keynote speaker at this conference. And I remember when I first heard about her, because she was all the talk and everybody went out and got her book, and I was into near-death experience books. This was something similar to that, so I went and got her book. And I remember as I read it, I didn't feel anything. And I thought that was really strange that all these people were making such a big deal out of this book, saying it was so amazing, everyone needs to read it, it's about the last days, and this woman's prophecy and visions. And I remember I read it and I didn't feel anything. It didn't even hold my attention. It just felt very bland and just like she was just quoting scripture, and just there was no detail or powerful, strong description of emotions. It was just very, monotone. And so because I'm a writer, I picked up on that right away, and I just felt like there was no passion in the book. There was no emotion in the book, and it was lacking so much that just from a writer standpoint, I could not give it a 5-star review. So I remember I gave it a very low review and just said I was so disappointed. With all the hype surrounding this book, I expected so much more, and it was so disappointing. And I remember she went on Amazon and responded to my comment and was really upset by it. And I remember feeling like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have left my review. And anyways, I just never had a good vibe about this person from the moment I read her book. But I thought, okay, she's just not for me. Well, then I remember people continued the hype, and then she had another book come out and people said, oh, that book's just as good, and anyways, on. And I remember she was going to be speaking at this conference that I was a vendor at. I had a booth at this conference. It was the same conference that I was speaking at. And so when she came out to do her presentation, I went to go see her along with so many other people, and I thought, okay, I just get a feel for people. I can get a feel for people right up front. Sometimes they don't even have to open their mouth. I just get a feel. And I know what they're about just from being in their presence, just from feeling them. So I remember we all go into this room and she was late. She wouldn't come, and we waited and it was really strange. People didn't know what was going on. And I remember her publisher used to be my first publisher. And I ended up paying to get out of that publishing contract, and I became a self-publisher after that, but he was my first publisher. So he was there and I was talking to him, this is strange, what's going on? And he was like, well, she's under attack from the adversary. Like, Satan is really attacking her. He doesn't want her to speak today. And I remember thinking, oh, wow, well, maybe she's sharing something really important. This is strange. And so I remember as we were all sitting in this room, to pass the time, they asked us to start singing hymns. So we started singing hymns at this conference, and it was hymn after hymn after hymn after hymn, and we're starting to wonder, is this ever going to happen? And then I remember she came into the room, and I just remember it was so dramatic. And I remember she couldn't stand and she kept falling. She was talking all over the place. Her sentences were slurred as though she was drunk. You couldn't understand what she was saying. She wasn't making any sense. Her eyes were kind of closed. She didn't seem to be alert. And I kept thinking, she's either possessed, she's drunk, or she's mentally ill, or she's extremely physically ill right now, and she's on some kind of powerful medication or some kind of a drug. And it just was not normal behavior. And her sentences were all over the place, and she was swaying and tipping over and falling down and crawling on the floor, and it was so dramatic, and people were looking around feeling really weirded out. This is the keynote speaker that so many people came to see, spent a lot of money buying tickets to see this person speak, and this is what we were getting. And so there was someone getting up speaking on her behalf saying, she is just really struggling today. The adversary is really attacking her. she has an important message and he knows that and he doesn't want her to share it. And then all of a sudden she would take off running and she would leave the room. Like her eyes would freak out and she would take off running out of the room. And they said something about how she was vomiting, or she was running to the bathroom to vomit because she was sick and being attacked and all kinds of things. It was so bizarre. And after about 45 minutes, I said, enough of this. Enough of this. I am done. And I left, and one by one we all started leaving and the room started emptying out. And I remember talking to another author who has some books at Deseret Book, and she said, that was the strangest thing I have ever seen. I said, me too. She said, I did not get a good feeling. I said, me neither. And she said, I've just always felt something was off about that person, but so many people follow her and love her and believe what it is she's sharing, but I just get a really weird vibe. I said, me too. And so we both agreed we needed to see that so that that could confirm the way we felt from day one. So it was a witness for us. And I remember after that, when people would reach out to me and say, what do you think about this person? Do you follow her? Do you like her books? I'm just starting to follow her. I love her. What do you think? I just would simply say, well, she's not for me. She's not for me. She's not for me. And I so much wanted to share that experience, but I never did. And so finally, I just feel like it's so important that I share some of these experiences to illustrate what I've seen, which has helped guide me in my feelings and in my choices and decisions about these people that make up that world. And I remember she was an emotion code or a body code practitioner, and that was around the time I became one as well. And now looking back at that, I think, oh my goodness, here is someone who was opening and balancing chakras and muscle testing and heavily involved in energy work and energy healing. That's why she was the keynote speaker at an energy healing conference. And here she is, just mentally unstable, emotionally unstable. She's someone that people pay money to. They make appointments to go to her so that they can feel balanced and feel happier and feel better. But she herself is a mess. She's a wreck and she can't even stand, and she doesn't make any sense, and something about her seems off. Anyways, from day one, the Lord said, stay away. So I did. And over the years, I watched as she continued down that path and took a lot of people with her. And eventually she was excommunicated from the church, and so many people left the church who were her strong supporters and followers. Just to hear people defend her and support her just kind of put that sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach again. You know, these people just don't see. How do they not see what I saw? How do they not see that? How do they not feel what I felt? But we're all on our own journeys, and it is what it is. I just felt that I needed to share this experience with anyone out there who needs to hear that. So I've had people point out to me before, and it's funny because this used to be my argument when I used to defend energy work. I used to say, well, a lot of these books are sold at Deseret Book. I bought my first couple of books that introduced me to all of this at Deseret Book. And yes, that is true. And so people have recently reached out to me and said, well, what do you think about that? You can buy these books at Deseret Book, so if this was so bad, why would they sell it there? And my response to that is, that's why I trusted them. That's why I felt like this was a good path, because that's where I got my introduction books. And I want to say that it's true. They are introduction books, so they're lighter, they're simplified, they're not filled with the heavy energy work and all of that terminology. It's just very simple. It's just more about the simple basics of healing and mind over matter, being positive, affirmations, finding balance, right? All of that. So it just seems innocent. It just seems like, well, yeah, this makes sense. But then as you go out and follow these people and read the rest of their material and get deeper into what it is they're teaching and offering, it goes down so many other paths. And you're led to so many other teachers who are connected to these authors, their friends, but they're teaching even heavier and deeper topics down that path. I remember in some of these books, they quote a lot of people who are anti-Christian. I'm not going to say names, but they're major spiritual leaders in the New Age world, in the Hindu world. These are people who don't believe in a Father in heaven and don't believe in God. They believe in that universal life force energy and that you are your own God, and whatever you want, you can have, you create it. You're the author of your creation, and you're here to become your own God, to create your own world. and that God is just an energy that floats through the universe. That's in you, it's in all of us, it's in the trees, it's in the flowers, it's in the air. That's God, and we're God, you're God, I'm God, we're all God. So these are the teachers that promote all that, and these women quote those teachers who have made it clear that they're very anti-Christian in their books. So I'm just gonna say, don't trust something because of who's offering it to you. That's a mistake that so many people make. We feel like, well, she's a Relief Society president and she's reading that book, so it must be a good book, I'm gonna read it too. Or this person is married to a state president, so they're going to these workshops or they're teaching these workshops, so it must be truth. These books are being sold at Deseret Book. That's a good store. That's a store that I've always trusted. So everything in these books must be true. They must be good. This must be a good path. In fact, here's a good example of this. Many of you know how I feel about Harry Potter, and of course how I feel about Halloween and anything that promotes witchcraft and spells. And we were at Deseret Book tonight. My daughter and I were there. She's 11 years old, and we were looking around at books, and she looked over at the shelf and saw the Harry Potter books. She said, "Mom, I can't believe they sell Harry Potter at Deseret Book," because she feels the same way that I do about these books. And so it was another reminder of exactly what I'm sharing right now in this video message. And the irony of that, what's so funny, is right across from these books were all of these other books of these authors that do the New Age spiritualism and energy work that I'm talking about in this video. So it's like those books were all right there in the same part of the store, and my daughter recognized that. She said, "Why do they sell these here?" And right across the way, they have books by the prophets and apostles, and it just didn't seem to go. These books didn't seem to belong in the same space. But again, just another example that just because a book is sold somewhere or offered by someone you admire and trust doesn't mean it's a good book or that it promotes truth. Anyways, I'm not going to name names, but I am going to say that I did meet one of these authors. One of these authors, I got to know her on a personal level. She put an email at the back of the book, and it was an old book, so I just thought the email maybe went to her publishing company. I didn't even think it would reach her, and I had a question, and she ended up replying. And we started conversing back and forth over a few weeks, and then she said, "Can I get your phone number? I want to call you." So I gave her my phone number, and she started calling me. She'd call me every week, and she'd talk to me for an hour. And she would just talk and talk and talk and teach me all of the stuff that I'd never heard before. And it was so exciting, and I always looked forward to her calls, and they came from an unlisted number because she was untouchable. You couldn't get a hold of her. No one had her personal phone number or her personal email. Usually these people are untouchable. You can't just go directly to them. So for her to be calling me on a personal basis every week, I felt pretty special. I saw her as a mentor. She was teaching me, and she was teaching me all the deep stuff she couldn't put in her book. And I remember her telling me that this is stuff I could not put in my book because then it wouldn't have got published or it wouldn't have made it into Deseret Book. So because you're so open-minded, I'm going to teach this to you. And then one day she invited me to her home, and we drove to see her, and we spent a whole day with her, and she just taught us all this stuff, and we took all these notes, and you guys, it was ridiculous. And some of the things she taught me, I've shared in past videos, red flags. And I just remember, oh my goodness, she was very much into the chakras, and it was to the point where she had a different chakra color for each day of the week, and Monday through Sunday you had to wear that chakra color for that day of the week, and if you didn't, your whole life was out of balance. And you were to never wear black. You had to get black out of your wardrobe, and so a lot of my friends left that day and threw away any clothing they had that was black, and threw away so many pairs of pants and skirts and shoes. And I just remember thinking, this feels so odd. I don't want to do this. I remember Sunday was the crown chakra, so Sunday was the day you had to wear purple, and I would see them at church every Sunday wearing the same purple dress every Sunday, and I thought, this feels weird. So I didn't participate, but these other friends of mine got very heavily involved into her teachings and her philosophies, and it made their life so stressful. I mean, I remember them getting anxiety because they wanted to do everything just right and cross every T just right and dot every I just right and follow what she had taught them to a T, and it made their lives stressful. And I felt like, no, this isn't of the Lord. The Lord is simple. His ways are simple. This is not of him. And I stepped back. So I noticed as I look back, I would slowly step back from these different mentors and leaders. Instead of putting them all under the same umbrella and just walking away from all of them as a whole, I just started individually, one at a time, removing myself from book, from teacher, until a few months ago when the Lord said, no, get rid of all of it. Walk away from all of it. Even though I stopped believing and practicing a lot of these things a couple of years ago, I didn't get rid of all of it until just a few months ago. Anyways, a friend reached out to me after my last video and shared with me a personal experience she had with the other author whose books are sold at Deseret Book, whom I have not met personally. And she said, you know, I had the chance to be on one of her TV segments or video segments, and she said I was so excited that I got picked and chosen. And when I met her, she was nothing like what I thought she would be. She was all smiles on camera. It seemed very forced, but the minute the cameras weren't rolling, she was frowning and seemed unhappy and wasn't very kind. She said I was really disappointed, and after that, I just wasn't impressed anymore. And I remember that. I remember this particular woman sharing in some of her videos that she had always suffered from depression, and that's why she was pursuing meditation and yoga and traveling to India to learn these spiritual paths. And through all of this knowledge, she had become happier, when really what brings us happiness is the gospel, is our Savior Jesus Christ. And even though she's a Latter-day Saint, that's not what she was teaching. And I remember watching her videos and feeling like her smile did kind of seem forced. Like she was really trying to let people know, I'm happy now, I no longer have depression. But my friend said, no, when the cameras weren't rolling, she was not very personable, she was not very kind, she was not very friendly, she was distant, kind of cold, but put on this facade when the cameras were on so that people would see the side of her she wanted them to see. And she said that was an eye-opener for me. So anyways, she's another example of making quite the income off of these teachings. These spiritual teachers do this as their full-time job. This is how they pay their bills. They're teaching you this and putting out these messages and books and all of that. So for me, that's another thing to pay attention to, is when people are making thousands and thousands of dollars, a lot of them have become millionaires. A lot of people who are just spiritual teachers, just out in the world, they have private jets and multiple homes, and they fly all over the world. They have made millions and millions of dollars off of teaching all of this. They've become untouchable. You know, I remember in this one interview I was watching, I mentioned earlier, a husband and wife that used to work for this woman. She was like a televangelist. And they said, you know, we were told that if ever she visited the premises, the main office, the headquarters, we were not to look at her or talk to her or address her. We were just to walk past her, and all we could do is smile. But she was untouchable. You didn't approach her, you didn't look at her. Sort of like the Queen, right? It reminds me of the Queen of England. There's all these rules, and you don't give eye contact, or you don't reach out first and shake hands. There's all these things you don't do. And that's how it is with a lot of these people. They're untouchable. They're no longer relatable, and they're not out serving. They're not out in the community just serving one-on-one and just reaching out to people and serving others. They're sort of more reclusive, and they're surrounded by their people, and they're no longer relatable. They're no longer personable. They're kind of just in their own world, just profiting off of all of these teachings and philosophies and what it is that they're offering. I've just seen a lot of patterns with that. Okay, again, as I was reflecting back on this journey, on my past, I mentioned how in past videos we used to have these flickering lights in the basement that would flicker, and it was like the lights were trying to communicate with us, and we'd be talking about something, or we would bring up Jesus, or we'd be having family home evening, and the light would start flickering. And when the kids would ask a question, it would like flicker twice for yes and once for no, or if the kids would say, is there somebody there, the lights would go crazy, and just it would try to get our attention. It was really not normal, and it really did feel like there was somebody there trying to get our attention, and it would happen all the time, but it was on and off. And so we would think, well, maybe somehow we invited this in, maybe it was something somebody watched on TV. At one time I shared an experience about how one of my children had a friend that told her she sent a demon to our home, and that's when that was happening again. And so we were always looking for reasons of why this was happening. But you know, it's so funny, ever since that day at the beginning of October, when I went through my home and I took a garbage bag and I just threw everything away. I threw away every book, every tool, anything. It didn't matter what it was. If it had to do with energy healing, energy work, yoga, spiritualism, new age, didn't matter how much money it costed me. I threw away thousands of dollars worth of items, and I put it in the garbage can, and I watched the garbage truck come and take it. And the minute that left my home, those lights have not flickered once. So that tells me that I had invited quite a bit into my home. I just think about lots of little odd supernatural things that have happened over the years in my life, and can't help but think those are probably things I invited in my home from having all of this in my home and reading these teachings and doing these practices. And oh my goodness, you guys, when I got rid of all that stuff, things shifted in my home dramatically. And you know, I never felt that my home was dark. I always felt like I had a beautiful home filled with light, you know, lots of windows, and I'm always playing Christ-centered music in my home. But it wasn't until I got that out of my house that I realized the difference that it made. It was night and day. So I just wanted to share that with you. Another thing I wanted to share with you is I looked back on this journey and my past. I remember there was a time when I was heavily involved in the Kundalini yoga and doing a lot of meditations. I remember during that time, I would always hear a ringing in my left ear, and it would happen right before a meditation or during or after. And it would happen every time I would go in my prayer closet, which was where I did the Kundalini yoga meditation. It's where I opened up those chakras or portals. It's where I invited all that stuff into my home, was in my prayer closet. So I'd be in there just praying or reading my scriptures, and I would start to get this ringing in my left ear. And I remember always feeling it was some kind of a presence, and I used to think, okay, well, maybe it's an angel, or a way that the Holy Ghost is communicating with me, or it's an ancestor of mine trying to get my attention. And I always had an excuse and a reason for that. And this ringing would always come. It was this buzzing in my left ear. And I forgot all about that until one of you reached out to me and told me that after you became a Reiki master and received that attunement, you started to always get this ringing in your left ear and it wouldn't go away. So it reminded me of that. It wasn't until about a year ago when I decided that that stuff just wasn't for me anymore. I still had a lot of it in my home, but I stopped participating in it. I stopped doing those meditations. I stopped all of that. I stopped reading those books. The ringing went away. So it wasn't there anymore. And I forgot all about that until someone reached out to me and I made that connection. But what I believe that to be was that it was a manifestation of the demonic ready to deceive me. So every time I sat down with my journal and my pen in hand, or I opened my scriptures and I was ready to muscle test what scriptures to read, muscle test what chapters and what books to read that day, that ringing would happen. And I just feel like it was the demonic just saying, oh, she's ready. Let's get on this today. Let's lead her where we want her to go. Let's teach her the next teaching we want to teach her. Let's deceive her some more. I really believe that's what that was, is I was becoming in tune with a demonic presence that was there ready to intervene and deceive me. Now, when I threw everything away in that garbage bag, I knew there was no gray, black or white. If it had anything to do with energy healing or chakra balancing or anything of that nature, it went in the garbage. I wasn't going to hang on to any of it, not even just a little bit of it. It all needed to go. And there was no looking back. I knew I couldn't have doubts. I couldn't look back and miss some things and be like, oh, today I just really feel like I need a muscle test of scripture. I just really wish I could do that. I needed to let it all go and never look back. Leave it all behind. Because if I were to hang on to some of it or have doubts or look back like Lot's wife, and because that's where my heart really was, how easy would it be for the adversary to pull me right back into it, right? If I were to say, well, I'm going to get rid of 95% of it, but I'm going to keep these couple of books and I'm going to keep doing these modalities because they really helped me through some hard times in my life, but the rest of it's going to go. Well, then it's pointless. It's pointless. I'm still leaving that door open to the demonic. I'm still leaving that door open for deception. I had to let all of it go. And that's how we get pulled back in, is we hang on to just some of it. And then over time we start to justify, well, it's really not so bad. And this really has helped me more than it has hurt me. And I really need this today. And we just start slowly getting back into it. We start justifying. And then before we know, we're back down that path again. So you have to forsake it all and you have to repent. So for me, it wasn't just walk away. It was run away. You know, and the more we are willing to sacrifice and give things up for the Lord, the more blessings we're going to experience. So it's always a good thing. So my life completely shifted when I did all of this. I never knew how good my life could be. I never knew how much peace I was really missing out on, because the peace that I had was a counterfeit peace. It was a false peace, a false hope. It was a world of false healing, and I'd put all of my faith in that. And once I had forsaken it all, it's like this incredible, intense peace poured out upon me, and I just feel all the time, I just feel so happy, so secure, so full of hope, so happy, so relaxed. I don't stress out. No matter what life brings me each day, I just have the same feeling of peace, and everything's good, and there isn't anything I can't do with the Lord, and I just feel so relaxed all the time and just so happy. I love being a mom. I love being a wife. I love just reading my scriptures and doing all the things before that I thought were just the milk, right? I look forward to that. I hunger for that. I love it, and it makes me so happy. And that's the difference. That's the difference that I've noticed. Now, a lot of people have reached out to me and have wanted to debate either all of this or just little bits and pieces in certain topics and certain modalities and certain practices or certain authors or certain books or teachers. They'll say, well, I agree with most of what you're saying except for X, Y, and Z, and I want to debate about that with you. And I have no desire to debate, because to me, debating is a distraction. It pulls us away from the spirit. There's really a bad spirit attached to debating. And I've realized the couple of times that I have let people know why I believe what I believe when they continue to ask me questions and want to talk about it. Well, why do you believe this? And why not this or that? And why not consider this or that? Or, you know, and I share with them my testimony and my experiences and what I believe. They try to prove those feelings wrong. I have learned that no matter what I say, they're always going to find a way to justify it. They're always going to find a scripture or some kind of a teaching to make it right. And if you really want something to be right, you're going to find ways to make it feel right. And there's always the flip side. If there's something you want to be wrong, you're going to find ways no matter what to make it wrong. But I don't go off of what I want. I go off of how I feel. And when I feel strongly convicted and led by the Spirit to forsake something, to get something out of my life, then everything that comes my way to try to persuade me otherwise means nothing. It goes in one ear and out the other, or I don't read it at all. Because you can't debate how you feel. You can't argue what you're feeling inside. That is so strong, and it's most important. So I always ask people, how do you feel? Are you at peace? Because what you want is peace. So if you're not at peace with something, if you watch my video or you've read one of my blog posts, and you're struggling with it, and it continues to play over in your mind, and you're losing sleep at night, and you're annoyed by it, and it's bothering you, and it's tormenting you, and you're not feeling peace, well, that tells you something. But if you read something and you're at peace with how that person feels or what they're sharing, and it either is for you or it isn't for you, at the end of the day, you just want to check yourself and make sure you're filled with peace. So with everything that I've shared, with this place that I'm at right now in my life, I feel so much peace. And it's a peace that I didn't have before. So all the things that people send me to try to persuade me otherwise is not enticing at all, because I've already been there. I've already been in that world, and I didn't have the kind of peace that I have now. So if something's bothering you and you can't let it go and you feel the need to argue it and debate it and revisit it, and you're losing sleep at night and it's just really digging at your mind, digging at your soul, That should be your answer right there. Ask yourself, why am I not at peace? For me, I eventually got to a point where I wasn't praying to the Lord, show me why this person is right. I want them to be right. Show me why this author might be right. Or I want this person to be wrong. I feel like they're wrong. Show me why they're wrong. I got to the point where I was just like, Lord, just show me the truth. I just want to know truth. If this person is deceiving me, if this group or organization is deceptive, I want to know about it. Show me the truth. So if you go into your prayer saying, Lord, show me how this might be true. Show me why this teacher or this philosophy or this organization might be good, might be true. I don't know that you're gonna get the answer that you're looking for, but if you go into your prayer and into your search while you're on your journey and you say, Lord, just show me truth. Show me deception and show me truth. If this is deception, show me. Or if this is truth, show me. And he will every time. That's what he did for me. And that's the difference. That question right there, Lord, will you show me the truth? That's what changed my life. It led me to a garbage bag, which led me to throw away all the deception and get it out of my life. There were so many things that were laced with darkness and deception, and were inviting darkness into my life even though they were disguised as light. And the difference in the feeling that I had afterwards, that's something that you can't argue with. You can't debate that. And sometimes people just don't understand that. Now, I referenced before this spiritual mentor that I had at the beginning of all of this, and I used to have appointments with her, and I would spend a lot of money just to have time with her and be taught by her. I remember in the beginning of our appointments, she would just start out with muscle testing these breadcrumb trails. You know, I'd come to her with an experience and she would start muscle testing it, and it would lead us on this trail from one breadcrumb to another breadcrumb to another breadcrumb until we started going down these mysterious unknown paths. So I started to learn to do the same. She was my mentor, so I learned muscle testing, and I would start having questions and muscle tests for the answers, and I would start going from breadcrumb to breadcrumb and go down these trails and these mysterious unknown paths. And then at our appointments, it turned into asking questions about my life, which led to asking questions about choices I should make and decisions that would impact my future. And it would become addicting. I needed appointment after appointment, and whenever I had any kind of an experience, I needed to go to my mentor to get the answers. And I stopped relying on my own personal revelation. In fact, what I ended up discovering is I would feel a certain way about something, and then I would go in there and express how I felt about it, and then she would muscle test and go, oh, well, I feel the same way, or I'm just getting the same answers you are. And I started to think, why am I paying you money for this? After a while, it started to feel wrong, and I thought, this just doesn't feel right. This just feels wrong. I'm becoming lazy with my own relationship with the Spirit and seeking my own personal revelation because I'm relying too much on her, and I'm relying too much on this muscle testing. And sometimes she would demonstrate the teachings of muscle testing with a pendulum. She would swing this pendulum and teach us how the different ways that the pendulum reacts to truth and deception. And sometimes she would ask questions again and get answers with this pendulum. And she would teach this in her presentations. Now right here, this reminded me of this. Here's a screenshot of a Wiccan website, a website for witchcraft, where they talk about muscle testing and pendulums and how they're the same, and how it's a great tool for spell casting and witchcraft. So I want to share with you real quick the definition from the Bible dictionary about divination, because we're taught in the scriptures to stay away from divination. So just how does the church define divination? Here's the definition from the Bible dictionary. Divination is any superstitious method of trying to discover the course of future events. Such practices have been found among all nations and in every age. They are frequently condemned in Scripture. Some obvious examples of this are crystal balls, or also known to children as magic 8 balls. Another one that's common among children is the fortune teller miracle fish. Another one that happens to be marketed to families as a fun game by the company Milton Bradley is the infamous Ouija board. Now, people often argue that it's all about your intent. You can use a tool for good or you can use it for bad. But would you feel that way with a Ouija board? or any of these divination tools that I've showed so far, would you feel comfortable using these tools to get personal revelation or asking questions pertaining to the gospel, even though your intent is good? Would you feel comfortable? Would you feel this is right? Is it really our intent that matters most and protects us from being deceived? Here is another one known as a pendulum dowsing chart. You simply swing your pendulum or your dowsing rod over the chart and ask your yes or no questions. This can also be done with crystals. This is a crystal chart. You simply shake the stones and drop them over the chart, and where they land determines the outcome of your future or where you need to focus. Now you can even take it a step further and design a crystal grid to ensure that you reach your goals in these areas. And don't forget the infamous tarot cards, also disguised under the guise of angel cards, because angel cards sound better. They sound safer. You've probably heard that phrase before, however the cards may fall. Well, this is where it comes from. There are different ways people go about using tarot cards for divination. Whether you drop them on a table and just see which ones land where, or you draw them out of a stack, or someone deals you a set of cards. Either way, you're using cards to determine the course of your future events. Now, I've never used pendulum charts, crystal charts, Ouija boards, or tarot cards, but I do know of so many Latter-day Saint people who do, and they're energy workers. They teach this in their classes and workshops, they write about it in their books, and they practice it in their appointments with their clients. They mingle it in with scripture and philosophy to make it sound safe and a good thing. So I've had people reach out to me and say, well, what about the Liahona and the Urim and Thummim and the seer stones? Isn't that divination? Because they were tools and they were giving answers to prophets. And that's the answer right there, is that these were tools coming directly from the Lord to a prophet, just like Aaron or even Moses with his staff. We'll see patterns throughout the scriptures of the Lord giving a tool, a physical object, to his prophets and using that tool to guide them or speak to them, just like the Liahona. And there are also accounts of this from the modern day restoration. So first I want to give the example of Oliver Cowdery. And I'm reading this from LDS.org. It says, early versions of the Revelation in Doctrine and Covenants 8 state that Oliver Cowdery had the gift of working with the sprout, or the rod of nature, indicating that he used a divining rod at some point. Now it's interesting that they use the word indicating rather than verifying or affirming. To indicate means to suggest or propose something. So not necessarily affirm it or verify it, but to suggest or propose. Now I point this out because there are many scholars in the church who are sort of on the fence about this. You have some scholars who say there is no evidence whatsoever that he actually used a divining rod. And they believe that the wording used is merely just symbolism of his gift. Then you have LDS scholars who believe that this actually was a divining rod just based on the time period, and that in that early time period there were many other people in that area who used divining rods. It was a source that many people relied upon. But both sides actually agree that there is no concrete evidence that proves that Oliver Cowdery used the divining rods of his day. Continuing reading here, it says, the Lord acknowledged Cowdery's gift, declaring that there is no other power save God that can cause this thing of nature to work in your hands. When church leaders prepared this revelation for inclusion in the Doctrine and Covenants in 1835, they called Cowdery's gift the gift of Aaron, reflecting its similarity to Aaron's rod. Other sources likewise suggest that Oliver Cowdery, as well as Joseph Smith Sr. and Joseph Smith Jr., had likely used divining rods, but the revelation does not clarify how Cowdery employed his rod. It does indicate this was only one of several gifts available to Cowdery. In addition, the revelation taught Cowdery how to obtain the gift of translation through study, prayer, and the aid of the Holy Ghost. So now, just for a moment, let's talk about divining rods and what they have been used for. According to the Wikipedia, dowsing is a type of divination employed in attempts to locate groundwater, buried metals or ores, gemstones, oil, grave sites, and many other objects and materials without the use of scientific apparatuses. Dowsing is considered a pseudoscience, and there is no scientific evidence that it is any more effective than random chance. Dowsers often achieve good results because random chance has a high probability of finding water in favorable terrain. It's believed to have originated in Germany in the 16th century, and the Wikipedia says, as early as 1518, Martin Luther listed dowsing for metals as an act that broke the first commandment. The 1550 edition of Sebastian Münster's Cosmographia contains a woodcut of a dowser with forked rod in hand walking over a cutaway image of a mining operation. The rod is labeled Virgula Divina, Gluck root. The Latin word means divine rod, and the German word means fortune rod or stick. But there is no text accompanying the woodcut. Now, these tools and methods vary widely, and most dowsers are also called diviners or water witches. Aren't those interesting terms, water witches and diviners? It just reminds you of what the scriptures say about witchcraft and divination. There's those words. But according to this definition online, it says that they probably still use the traditional forked stick, which may come from a variety of trees, including the willow, peach, and witch hazel. Other dowsers may use keys, wire coat hangers, pliers, wire rods, pendulums, or various kinds of elaborate boxes and electrical instruments. And as the dowser walks back and forth over an area that's being tested, they know if they're looking for water that they have passed over a source of water if the end of their stick supposedly rotates or points downward. There is an unseen energy supposedly moving the sticks. So, did Oliver Cowdery use a divining rod? Here's what scholars and Latter-day Saint apologetics have to say about this. So, the rod of nature in Cowdery's hands would be a means of gaining revelation on doctrine. Thus, the alteration which describes the rod as the gift of Aaron clarifies the Lord's intent and explains how Oliver and Joseph understood the matter. Aaron's rod was an instrument of power, but only insofar as God revealed and commanded its use. Such a perspective is a far cry from the occult links which the critics attempt to create. Doctrine and Covenants 8 approves a rod only for sacred information. It also suggests the rod that displayed God's power in the Egyptian plagues, in striking the rock of life-giving water, or in calling down strength on Israel's warriors. That rod was a straight shaft, the shepherd's staff possessed by Moses at his call. Used by both Moses and Aaron, it was foremost the rod of God, also Moses' rod, but formerly called the rod of Aaron. It functioned as a visible sign of authority, just as Judah's scepter was a sign of divine kingship in Jacob's blessing, or Elijah's staff held by the servant who went in his name. Thus, the rod of Aaron was a staff of delegated agency, and the 1835 revision to the gift of Aaron suggests Oliver's spiritual power to assist Joseph Smith as Aaron assisted Moses. Another LDS researcher writes, Moses and Aaron did not have divining rods, dowsing rods, or anything of the sort. It was a scepter in token of his authority that was passed down from Adam all the way to the Messiah. There is nothing in the Bible, ancient literature, or contemporary 19th century literature that indicates the rod of Aaron or rod of Moses had anything to do with divining. The rod was a symbol for Aaron's priesthood authority in the Bible. There were two rods in the Bible. Aaron's rod was called a rod of nature, which was a concept that was commonly understood in the 19th century. The Swedenborg Society wrote in 1865, quote, "The rod of Moses denotes the potency of the Lord as the divine law. His staff, the power proceeding from the divine natural." End of quote. Moses possessed a divine rod that transformed into a serpent, but Aaron's rod was different. 12 wooden rods were buried, and Aaron's almond rod blossomed, indicating his priesthood authority and the unification of the 12 tribes. His rod performed a miracle using natural abilities and put down murmuring. That's why it was called a rod of nature. The rod of Moses symbolized direct revelation, like how the 10 Commandments were written by the finger of the Lord himself. It was unnatural. Now, Doctrine and Covenants 8 begins by telling Oliver Cowdery that he had the spirit of revelation, but he also had another gift which also told him things, just through a natural means. What did it tell him? John Peter Lang explained in 1884, quote, "The rod marked with Aaron's name blossomed the best overnight, as a symbolic spiritual expression that the priesthood did not have its roots in natural dispositions and natural gifts, but flowed from the power of the Spirit." Oliver Cowdery was given the same message in Doctrine and Covenants 8. Quote, "Even so sure shall you receive a knowledge by the manifestation of my Spirit. Yea, behold, I will tell you in your mind and in your heart by the Holy Ghost, which shall come upon you and which shall dwell in your heart." End of quote. Like Aaron's rod, there would be a manifestation. The rod of Aaron blossomed in his heart and mind as a flowering manifestation of the gospel's truth, to put down all murmuring and to know that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was the true church. John Peter Lang frequently refers to Aaron's rod as the blossoming rod, which matches an earlier version of Doctrine and Covenants 8. This further proves that Doctrine and Covenants 8 was referring to the rod of Aaron, not a divining rod, considering that the original revelation to Oliver Cowdery called it a sprout rather than a rod. The wording was later changed to rod of nature and then to the gift of Aaron. Now let's discuss another example from the modern day restoration. This is the example of Hiram Page. Hiram Page became one of the 8 witnesses to the Book of Mormon during June of 1829. Not long after that, Joseph Smith discovered him using a seer stone to receive revelations for the church. The only available detail about the stone was that it was black, and the revelations were regarding the organization and location of Zion. Now here is the perfect example of the very elect being deceived. Oliver Cowdery, whom we just talked about, as well as the Whitmer family, and it's assumed that many others, they believed these revelations that Hiram Page had received. They believed that they were true. Early Saint Newell Knight remembered quite a roll of papers full of these revelations, which were in contradiction to the New Testament and the revelations of these last days. He also remembered that Joseph was deeply concerned. He recalled being in the same room with the prophet Joseph, and that most of that night was spent in prayer and supplication. Joseph Smith received a revelation during the conference. The revelation, which is now section 28 of the Doctrine and Covenants, said Hiram Page had been deceived. Personal inspiration is a true principle, yet no one but the president of the church may write revelations for the church. Since the Spirit bore witness of these truths, all, including Hiram Page, renounced the false messages and were filled with the gifts of peace and faith and hope and charity. Hiram agreed to discard the stone and the revelations he received, and join in following Joseph Smith as the sole revelator for the church. The members present confirmed this unanimously with a vote. Later, the stone was ground to powder, and the revelations purportedly received through it were burned. That is a great example of how when you realize things are deception, that it's so important to not only get them out of your home and get them out of your life, but to destroy them. So I talked about my garbage bag, how I filled it up with all of these things in my home that I felt were deceptive. And I didn't just get them out of my house, but I threw them away. I put them in the garbage can and watched the garbage truck carry them away. They were destroyed. Now, Dallin H. Oakes has said, it should be recognized that such tools as the Urim and Thummim, the Liahona, seer stones, and other articles have been used appropriately in biblical, Book of Mormon, and modern times by those who have the gift and authority to obtain revelation from God in connection with their use. At the same time, scriptural accounts and personal experience show that unauthorized through perhaps well-meaning persons, so people that have a good heart, have made inappropriate use of tangible objects while seeking or claiming to receive spiritual guidance. Those who define folk magic to include any use of tangible objects to aid in obtaining spiritual guidance confound the real with the counterfeit. They mislead themselves and their readers. So he's clarifying that these early tools, such as the Urim and Thummim and the Liahona, seer stones, etc., they were not considered folk magic because they were not only used by those who had the gift, but also those who had the authority from God to obtain revelation in connection with their use. So that's the takeaway from all of this right there. Those are the two key factors that always need to be considered. Does this person have a real spiritual gift? And also, does this person have the authority from God to use that gift? Is this person using that gift for the purposes of God according to His will, not their own will, for their own purposes and their own gain? But you see, with all of these other things, with all of these other tools and practices and modalities, these are practices and teachings that come from other people. You go to a class, a workshop, a program, you get certified, you buy a book, you learn how to do it from other people. And there's room for so much deception with that. There is wisdom in the Lord speaking through one prophet, speaking through his mouthpiece to the body of Christ as a whole. And you know, really, we don't need all these other things personally for our own personal revelation if we understand how to recognize the Spirit and how to be in tune to the Spirit and feel and hear that still small voice. We don't need these other things when we're truly in tune with the Spirit. And I just want to add to all of this a different kind of caution. So the decision for me to walk away from all of this, including muscle testing, was my own personal revelation, as I've said before. My own personal revelations, choices, and decisions are just that, my own. Always take everything to the Lord and get your own witness, your own confirmation, because maybe what's not right for me is somehow right for you, and vice versa. What's right for you may not be right for me. When I was participating in these things, I was using it to locate scriptures and find answers in my scriptures. I was using it to find page numbers and personal revelation just for me in other books. So at the time, it did feel right. It did feel good. I did receive answers that I felt blessed my life. However, as I've said before and in this video, I believe that my spiritual muscles were becoming weak because I was becoming so dependent and reliant upon these other sources to get that revelation, to get those answers, to hear from the Spirit. I had forgotten that prior to all of that, I heard the Spirit all the time, very clearly in my heart, thoughts that would come to my mind, and through strong feelings and impressions. As I became more reliant on these other tools and methods, that real spiritual gift that I have started to weaken. And so as I was cleaning out my home, I felt I just needed to walk away from all of it. Not to try to investigate whether some of it might be right or okay, because for me, I had such strong feelings from my experiences about all of this stuff connected to that world, that I truly believe that by hanging on to some of it, it would be so easy for me to be pulled back into that world. But the new caution that I want to add here is that I have learned that a lot of these words are like a trigger for me because I've had so many negative, eye-opening experiences pertaining to that world that when I hear them, even in a good and pure context, they send off a trigger for me, sort of a reminder of those negative feelings and experiences. So I want to caution everyone out there, don't get so caught up in all of the red flags. Be careful not to get so caught up in all of the red flags that you shut everything out. Now let me give you an example of what I mean by that. Something big that I noticed in a lot of these groups was that there are so many who pray to their Heavenly Mother. Almost this Heavenly Mother worship that I've talked about before. And yes, we know we have a Heavenly Mother. In fact, today, as I was listening to that book, The Saints, it says, during one of Joseph's visits, Zina asked him, "Will I know my mother as my mother when I get over to the other side?" More than that, he said, Joseph Smith said, "You will meet and become acquainted with your eternal mother, the wife of your Father in heaven." "Have I then a mother in heaven?" Zina asked. "You assuredly have," said Joseph. "How could a father claim his title unless there were also a mother to share that parenthood?" So this is a sacred doctrine that we as members of the church hold dear. And I have seen so many groups and so many people pray to their Heavenly Mother openly at events and in large groups, and these are the same people and the same groups that I have talked about in my recent videos as proving to be wolves in sheep's clothing. So I have found for me, when I even hear the title Heavenly Mother, suddenly that triggers something inside of me because of my past experiences. Now, if I were so caught up in red flags, I might view something like that down the road as a red flag, something to stay away from because of its connection with my past experiences, even though I know that that is a true doctrine that we believe. Another example of this is when I hear the words bridge building, because a lot of the negative things that I encountered and experienced, which a lot of it I haven't shared in my videos, happened at bridge building events or with bridge building supporters, and among those who are very passionate about bridge building. A lot of what I experienced really sounds like a movie. If I hadn't experienced it myself, I don't know that I'd believe it. But because I saw what was happening with my own eyes and I heard it with my own ears, it was enough for me to walk away from all of this. It was enough for me to walk away from all of these people, these groups and organizations, and clutch tighter to the iron rod. So bridge building is another term that is a trigger for me. It's not a bad thing. In fact, it's a good thing to build bridges of peace and understanding. But now when I hear it, it triggers something inside of me because of what I've experienced that involved a lot of wolves in sheep's clothing. So I have to be careful going forward that just because I hear the words bridge building doesn't mean that's a red flag. Just because it triggers something emotionally inside of me doesn't make it a red flag. So on LDS.org under Gifts of the Spirit, it says this: in the New Testament, Jesus Christ promised his disciples that signs shall follow them that believe, including casting out devils, speaking with new tongues, and healing the sick. By the early 1800s, however, many Christians debated whether such miracles had been intended only as signs for the authority of the ancient apostles, or if they followed believers in any age. Christians who believe the gifts ended with the apostles are often called cessationist, while those who believe these gifts continue are called charismatic. Early Latter-day Saints, believing in the Book of Mormon message that the day of miracles had not ceased, were charismatic. They sought for and expressed the gifts of the Spirit in a variety of ways. The saints soon learned, however, that not all charismatic displays came from God. When Joseph Smith came to Kirtland from New York in 1831, he witnessed meetings filled with charismatic behavior and became concerned over how to distinguish authentic spiritual gifts from other displays. I talked about this and showed examples of this in our modern day in Message 127. Through revelations given to the prophet, the saints learned that false spirits could deceive individuals who sought spiritual manifestations for their own sake, and that gifts should be used to serve and to edify. So in other words, are we spending a great amount of time alone in our home using our own spiritual gifts for our own benefit, seeking out our own supernatural experiences, hoping to see, witness, and experience divine messengers just because we think it would be awesome to experience, simply as a spiritual entertainment means, and to satisfy our own euphoric addictions, maybe so that we can feel a little bit extra special that we're having those experiences? Or are we reserving those spiritual gifts? So are we actively seeking spiritual manifestations, or are we reserving these spiritual gifts, holding them sacred, and reserving them for times when we can uplift, serve, and edify others? The Lord also clarified that those ordained to watch over the church would have the gift to discern whether the exercise of certain gifts was from God. Church leaders continued to counsel with each other and the saints about the purpose and proper use of spiritual gifts. So again, it says here that those who believe in the Book of Mormon message that the day of miracles have not ceased are called charismatic. Now that was a word I grew to love. I would share it all the time, especially when referencing my bridge building experiences. But then later, as I discovered that rabbit hole that I mentioned earlier in this video, that word charismatic became a trigger word for me. And unfortunately, now when I hear that word, it starts to feel like a red flag. But again, I have to stop myself, use discernment, and separate my own negative feelings and emotions from past experiences. And as I've said before, I decided for me, I felt that anything that had to do with chakra balancing, anything that was associated in any way with chakras and balancing energy centers was something that I needed to stay away from and avoid. And that pretty much covered all energy work. Now, I asked in those videos to please not reach out to me and ask me personally for my own opinions about all the different various forms of tools, modalities, energy work, authors, leaders, organizations, that again, it's your responsibility to go to the Lord and ask yourself about what you should be welcoming into your life and what you should be staying away from. But even though I've asked that many times, people still continue to contact me and ask me for my opinions. And it really doesn't do a lot of good, because oftentimes once they hear my opinion or what was right for me, they want to start to debate that and throw out other things and say, well, consider this. What are your thoughts about that? In hopes to persuade how I already feel, the answers that I've already received for me. So it really doesn't do any good. You really need to go to the Lord yourself and get your own answers, because my personal revelation is just that. It's revelation just for me personally. In fact, right after I just recorded that part of the video, a friend of mine reached out to me. She's a sweet friend, and I don't mind at all answering her questions. So I hope she's not embarrassed when she hears this part of the video. I just thought it was so funny that I had just recorded that, and then she wrote me. Anyways, she asked me my opinion about foot zoning, in which I replied that I really can't give one because I've never had it done. I don't know much about foot zoning. But I did write her, My gauge has been to avoid anything that has to do with opening and balancing chakras or energy systems. That's the root of the deception. The chakra system and Kundalini Yoga were introduced through Hinduism. Each chakra is linked to a Hindu god. The chakras are also known as channeling wheels, which I feel is another term for portals. It's taught that they are asleep inside of us and we need to awaken them in order to rise above the material world. When you open them, you invite the power of that Hindu god into you, which I believe is a demon. I hope that helps you. She replied, I've only had a foot zone done twice. Once was strictly physical, a part of the foot corresponding with organs and using those points on the foot to boost those organs. The other time was very much energy-based with clearing and balancing. I guess I don't have an answer other than the covenant I made in the temple to avoid certain things comes to mind. If there is any question as to something's purity, it should be avoided. And so she answered her own question, and I replied, that's so true. What a great reminder. Now there's many other examples I can give about this of certain terms and words and practices that sort of have that trigger effect for me now because of what I've experienced and what I've exposed in these videos. I've even had to step back and look at a lot of my past spiritual experience during that time. And I've had to separately analyze each experience to decide what was really from the Lord and what was not, rather than just blanketing all of my past experiences under one umbrella of deception. I've realized that I can't do that. I've realized that I have to go back through each individual experience as directed by the Spirit and learn for myself what was truth and what was deception. So I put that caution out there, not to be so caught up in always looking for red flags that you close yourself off to other truths and revelations that you've received in the past or that have yet to come. So I said to my friend the other day, what about green flags? We don't talk often enough about green flags. The green flags would be all of those things that support what you already know to be true and that supports the doctrine and the counsel that we receive from the leaders of the church, that supports the pure Word of God. So let's not just focus on the red flags and always look to point out the red flags, but let's also start paying attention to the green flags. And when I opened up that can of worms and discovered all of that deception that was happening, honestly, I just wanted to hide away. I just sort of wanted to hide away in my home where I know that I'd be safe and proceed with great caution about future friendships with people not of my faith. And of course, that's something that Satan would want me to do. Satan would want me to hide away and to be afraid of making new friendships. So there's wisdom in being cautious, but we have to be careful that we're not so overcautious that we hide away and fail to do the Lord's work. Now, I did a little bit of research on muscle testing, and it was introduced in the 1960s. This was around the same time that the New Age movement was happening, when the yoga teachers from the East were coming to the United States, specifically California, and teaching everyone about yoga and meditation and New Age and the Age of Aquarius. This was around the time that muscle testing came about. So it is fairly new, and it's a tool people use to get answers. Makes me think of a Ouija board. People use a Ouija board to get answers, to get truth or deception, to get a yes or a no. Just like people who go to a fortune teller or a tarot card reader. They drop the cards, flip them over, and you get answers about your questions in life. You get yeses or nos, and you get information pertaining to your future. Just like going to someone who does channeling or a psychic medium. The scriptures refer to all of this as divination. It's funny that it has that root word divine, and in that New Age movement, they refer to God as the divine. Now for me, what I've learned, if the Lord wants to show me something about my future, He's gonna do so through blessings through visions, through dreams, prophecy, impressions, and thoughts and feelings. And again, having said all of that, not all dreams and prophecy and visions and thoughts and feelings come from the Lord. So in this last hour that we're living in this final hour that we're in, the last minute of the 11th hour, we need to start exercising our faith. We need to start strengthening our faith in the Lord and not relying on all these other things. All of these other things of that world are like a crutch. They're weakening us. They're making our spiritual muscles lazy. I truly believe that muscle testing and all of these other forms of divination rob us from our faith because we want to get answers and we want them now. We don't want to have patience. We don't want to have to wait on the Lord. And just like it says on the Wicca website, muscle testing is the preferred way to get answers because it's the fastest way to get answers. Now, a lot of people will say, well, it's just a tool and it's all about whether you use it for good or for evil. Just like the internet, just like a computer, you can use the internet to do terrible, dark things, or you can use it to share light and share the gospel. So all of these modalities and tools are just that. They're just tools, and you can use them for good and light, or you can use them for darkness. That's the argument you'll continue to hear in these circles, in that world. And they'll say, you know, there's a counterfeit to everything. So the tool itself isn't a counterfeit. It's how you use it that's the counterfeit. But if that were true, then it would be like saying, well, then it's okay to use a Ouija board. Because if I'm using the Ouija board to talk to the Lord and to ask questions about the gospel and about doctrine, then I'm using it for good. I'm using it for light. So it's okay to bring this Ouija board into my home and talk to the Lord through it. See, that sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? The Lord told me, run from this world. Don't walk away, run away, and run away from everything connected to it, everything that's tied to it, which to me is all of these tools and all of these modalities. He said, build up your faith and strengthen your ability to hear the Holy Ghost. I used to argue that the Holy Ghost worked through me when I muscle tested and that the answers that came were from the Spirit. It was just another way that the Spirit communicated with me. I used to argue that. I used to believe that. Then later, I changed my stance to muscle testing just being a witness of what the Holy Ghost was already telling me. So I would get a prompting or an answer from the Spirit, but then I would have to hurry and muscle test it. I would do this. I would muscle test this way. I would have to hurry and muscle test to see if I got the same answer so that I would know I wasn't being deceived. That's what my mentors had taught me. That's what they did. And you know what? It's all deception. You have to run away from all of it, not just some of it, but all of it. So as I got reflecting back on this entire journey, I thought, you know what? There are so many past videos on my channel and things I have written in past books that I would have written differently if I knew what I know now. There are references I make in past videos where I refer people to some of these teachers and books, and I share things that I simply don't believe anymore. And I thought, oh my goodness, should I go through and delete most of my channel? What do I do? Because I can't just cut out parts of that video. They're already on YouTube and I don't have some of those videos anymore. And what do I do? And as I got thinking about this, I was having a conversation with some friends about it. And they said, you know what? You should just leave it and let people see your journey. Let people see the old you versus the new you. Let people see so they can relate at where you were at on your journey 2, 3, 4 years ago. And maybe they'll relate because that's where they're at right now. But then they'll see where you are now and see the difference. So maybe it's good to let people see your entire journey. So I did go back on some of those videos and I put in the description and on the titles, I no longer believe this. I no longer believe XYZ in this video, or I don't support that anymore. You know, but in some of these same videos, I share an awesome testimony or an amazing story about something else. And so I want to be able to leave that in the video. So anyways, it's been crazy and there's so many videos on my channel and they're so long. It's hard to be able to go through and watch every single one of them and find what I shared or what I didn't share. So I just trust that somehow this will be helpful. You know, and it might just be that some of my older videos speak to people out there who are at that point in their life right now where I was a few years ago. So they find that video and it pulls them into my channel and then they discover these videos and maybe it will be helpful that way. Anyways, I know that was a lot, but I just really felt like I had to share all of that. I felt like I had to really show you more details about my journey and where I've been and where I am now and how I got there. And I believe all of this is important because you guys, where we're at right now in the final minute of this final hour is so crucial with everything that's happening even just next year and what that's leading us into. We have to be so careful. We have to truly be tuned in to the right voices. Steer clear of that deception. But how can we steer clear of it if we don't even recognize that we're in it, right? So I hope that this video has been helpful for someone out there. I hope that it motivates you to stay on that covenant path, to repent of anything that you need to repent of, to realize that we're at that point right now where the Lord is coming. He is coming. He is coming soon. And so many of us are not ready. So many of us have our hearts somewhere else and we don't even realize it. We don't even realize it. We're blind to it. So I hope these videos have been a wake-up call for so many, and I hope that they inspire you, motivate you, encourage you to get back on that path, to tune out all the other voices, to clean out your life, do an inventory, get rid of all of the things that are inviting darkness and deception into your home, into your family, and into your life, and get it all out. And as you do this, you will be blessed. You will have amazing experiences. Amazing experiences don't just happen to people who are involved in that world, you guys. You can have amazing experiences with the Lord on the right path, on the covenant path, keeping all the commandments, following just the prophet, not being led astray, not being deceived by all these other voices. You can have those amazing experiences that will really grow your faith. And so, anyways, it truly is an exciting time that we live in. There are so many amazing things that are on the horizon. I can feel it, I know it, I believe it, and I'm so excited to be alive and on the earth at this time. Well, anyways, thanks so much for joining me today, you guys. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time.